the western horseshoe goes the 01 car, which is all white with a little bit of red detailing on the top of the roof and the dorsal fin for Kevin Magnussen. He's part of just a 3-driver lineup. There are only a handful of cars in the DPI category that have decided to go the Le Mans style of driver combinations, as in 3 rather than 4. So you have the 01 with Renger van der Zande, Scott Dixon, Kevin Magnussen, the 5 car likewise, Sebastian Bourdais, Tristan Vautier and Laurent Duval, and the 55 Mazda, who've done it that way for quite some time actually. Oliver Jarvis, and current driver Jonathan Bomarito, with Harry Tincknell, who's just exited the 55 car at that stop, I believe. So Exeter man Tincknell out, Bomarito clambering in for Mazda. Has Jonathan been in at the wheel of the car already, Jeremy, in this race, or will this be his first stint? We'll check that in a moment, but well, of course, stepping in around about the 2-hour mark, it's easy to miss the odd stint here and there. 01 back in again. No, not back in again. It hadn't stopped at the same time or in the same group of stops as the other cars around it. So this is fine for the Cadillac Chip Ganassi Racing DPI. Kevin Magnussen comes in, and that will allow Ricky Taylor to take the lead for the moment. And Joe Bradley is returning to the broadcast here, busy hunting down drivers. There's a spinner out on the racetrack though, that's coming out of the western horseshoe, and it is rejoining what looked to me to be an LMP3 car, which was in a little bit of strife. Hopefully not too much time lost, as the 01 car, which was driven by Kevin Magnussen, heads back onto the raceway. The 2 drivers then being changed, and others settling in for longer stints. That is no driver change. Kevin Magnussen staying at the wheel. Joe, we've been treated through the years to Formula 1 drivers almost kind of discovering this race for the first time. Do you think Kevin Magnussen, well, he'll know this through his dad, of course, but do you think it's become an instant favourite for the day for Magnussen Jr.?
I think Magnussen Jr. has been well up for this since he finished his Formula 1 job back in Abu Dhabi just before Christmas, and he's really fired up. In fact, one of the recent quotes I read, he was looking forward to going for a win again. And it's been a long time. These young drivers, they go through the junior formulas and are very successful in their climb up the ladder, and then they get to F1, and unless you're in the top, well, these days, unless you're in the top 2 teams, arguably, you don't really stand a chance of actually winning. It's a fight for those podium and lower points positions, isn't it? And Magnussen's been in one of the poorest cars on the F1 grid for a long time now, and for me, I think it's a bit of a waste of a talent there, because I've always rated him. I know people you talk to, he can be a bit marmite with regards to people's opinions, but I think he's a very, very competent, capable driver. And you know what, Johnny, this week or last week and the rest of the previous week we've just seen has proven that, hasn't it? That Kevin Magnussen has been absolutely on the job from the very outset. And yes, he'll be familiar. I'm not sure if he's actually been here. I remember interviewing his dad, Jan, in the pit at Le Mans a few years ago, and Kevin had just been dropped for the first time by McLaren. And he's standing next to him, and I said to Jan, is it okay if I talk to your son? And Jan, of course, in Jan's inimitable style, said, ask him. I said, Kevin, are you okay for an interview? He said, yeah, go on. So the studio came to me, and I said, so Kevin, you're here with your dad. Have you ever fancied doing any racing? And he just looked at me as if I was a crazy man, It's like, I said, don't worry, I'm only kidding. So come on, tell me the truth. Tell me the truth about McLaren. And he didn't, of course. He gave me the politically correct answer. He's a great kid. He's a great driver. I say kid, he's an adult. In fact, he's a parent now, isn't he? So he's entered the real world there. I'm expecting big things from that young man. He's in the Ganassi team. and hard to judge at this stage of the Daytona 24 hours, but speed-wise and performance-wise, yes, very much, very, very rated by me.
28 years young now, would you believe?
But oh, don't. This will be
the first time.
Don't.
I know. I reckon this will be the first time he will have ever raced with a roof over his head, because it's all been open wheel, single-seater stuff up until this point. The spin, by the way, for the LMP3 car, which I still have yet to identify, I've seen it a number of times now, I still can't quite get there, but it involved the BMW from Team RLL, so a GTLM car, I think the red and white BMW, which would make it the 25 machine, and just rapidly scrolling through race control messages to try and work out whether that's been identified. It will have been identified by the clerks of the course there, and blame apportioned if necessary, but LMP3 spinning across the nose of a BMW coming out of the Western Horseshoe, and both able to continue on. In fact, the BMW didn't really affect the 25 car, although there may be some damage on the nose of the Philip Eng driven M8 GTE. We'll keep abreast of that, and any penalties that may go the way of, I'm going to suggest the BMW, if anybody, because often the car that gets spun out by a car behind, it tends to be the fault of the car behind. Not always, and that's not me putting the blame on, just suggesting that that's the general pattern of things. Tim Bourret comes into pit road for Tower Motorsports. Christopher Mies heading back out again. He's been Wheel of the Dragon Speed Orica for a little while now, because I remember him setting the best time within that car not too long back, which would have been a 138.137. So in and out for Chris Mies. Tristan Nunez doing the chasing in third spot, and all rather busy around the outside of the tri-oval for car number 5. That was a narrowing gap between the right Motorsport Porsche and the very hard concrete wall on the right side. There might be a safer barrier there actually, but nevertheless you don't want to be hitting it at that sort of speed. Tristan Vautier had it all in hand, I am sure, and still continues to lead, but only by 3.7 seconds now, because 136.1 from the chasing Kevin Magnussen is quicker than Vautier's pace, probably not helped out by that traffic that Vautier caught at the end of the lap. The gap steadily decreasing, the sharp end of the order. Ricky Taylor in third, and in fourth place is now Mike Rockenfeller, making 3 Cadillac DPIs in the top 4 out of turn 1. Goes a number of GT Daytona cars. There, of course, a Ferrari of Nicholas Nielsen is one of them. That's not out of turn 1, that's actually coming much later on in the lap and working their way towards the end of the straight, the back straight, and into the bus stop chicane. So slamming on the brakes, working their way left and right. Plenty of curb being taken by all GT Daytona cars there. And now an opportunity to see a GT Daytona car being overtaken by a GTLM machine. So the white headlights of the Ferrari on the high side. In the driver's briefing, if you're in the slower classes, you're instructed to stay down on the low side and allow the faster cars to overtake and make their own arrangements. So that's exactly what Davide Rigon did. Was able to get by Nicholas Nielsen well before the braking area for turn number 1. And Jeremy Shaw joining me, Johnny Palmer, in the Haggerty Global Broadcast Centre. We're in that part of the race where GT Daytonas are properly getting stuck in and posing the odd moving chicane for the prototypes that are looking to lose as little time as possible on each lap.
Yeah, exactly right, and this is going to continue now for the next 20 hours, because we're almost coming up for 4 hours into the race. That's pretty remarkable, isn't it? It's been really interesting so far. Tristan Vautier stretched out that lead in that last stint. It was as high, I think, as 15 seconds at one stage, but now it's down to just 4 over K-Mag, Kevin Magnussen. Ricky Taylor is dropping back a little bit in car number 10. That's the Konica Minolta Acura. sure he won't be too concerned about that. But Mike Rockefeller, as you say, has taken over the wheel of the number 48 car at this last round of pit stops, take over from Simon Pagenaud. So this is Rocky's first time back here for a couple of years, I guess. But he's got a lot of experience here in the past. Has Rocky, including one win. So back in 2010, well, that was 11 years ago now, was it? That's amazing to think it was that far long ago. But an interesting race, I think, at this stage. And Mike Conway is driving the number 31 car now. He took over from Chase Elliott, and the gap from him to the kind of rest of the field is now just a little bit less than 20 seconds.
Just getting some information through regarding the clash and the incident on the exit of the Western Horseshoe, which I was describing. It was actually the 33 LMP3 that was involved, which is the Sean Creech Motorsport Ligier, and that car spinning after some contact from the 24 BMW. The 24 was apportioned, assessed incident responsibility in that incident. So car 24 given a drive-through penalty because of that, and the treble one gets a penalty. The fire extinguisher not properly manned for car treble one, which is the GRT Grasser Racing Lamborghini. Dolphin Eichen had been driving that, but we're probably a few stints on now. Stein Schotthorst has just brought it in. That may well actually be the drive-through penalty that needs to do. So it's another drive-through for Austrian squad GRT Grasser, and then treble one car. They've got two cars in the race. Changes of position in GT Daytona, a class that is led still by Kyle Kirkwood for Vassar Sullivan and the Lexus. Second, Indy Doncia, but only by half a second, back to Trent Hidman's almost ever-present Bright Motorsport Porsche in the top three. Then it's Charlie Eastwood for TF Sport, the first of a couple of Astons, because Darren Turner slipped behind the TF Sport car, and Indy Doncia on this lap takes the GT Daytona lead. Now, not sure where that happened on the racetrack, but already now has a lead of 0.4 of a second. So Doncia, 57, Windward Racing Mercedes, ahead of Kyle Kirkwood. That's the first lead change we've had in GT Daytona for about an hour or so, I feel.
That seemed like a long time ago, we saw that. We've seen that change. That number 14 car has been in control for quite a long way. So, yeah, hats off there. This is Windward Racing, of course, stepping up to the IMSA WeatherTech Sports Car Championship this weekend for the first time after some very strong runnings in the Michelin Pilot Challenge with the GT4 Mercedes, and that's a super strong lineup in that number 57 car as well. There's three silver drivers in there, and the platinum, Mauro Engel is the platinum driver, but Russell Ward, Indy Doncia, and Phil Ellis, who all are very, very strong drivers indeed. So they felt good coming into this race, I think, and they're certainly looking good right now.
You're tuned to RS2 IMSA Radio, part of the Radio Show Limited network of channels. It's Johnny Palmer and Jeremy Shaw in the Haggerty Global Broadcast Centre, and Joe Bradley's looking after the VP Racing Fuels pit and paddock updates. Here are here's the order then, after 4 hours of running, as Jeremy makes the point. The Mazda in-race update, and the number 5 car of Tristan Vautier leads the Mustang sampling Cadillac machine. It's 126 laps down for that car, 4 seconds the advantage over Kevin Magnussen. Ricky Taylor's third, and Mike Rockefeller is fourth in an Acura and Cadillac respectively. Tristan Nunez drives the number 11 LMP2 Win Autosport Oreca, and he leads LMP2 from the Simon Huffaker car, Scott Huffaker car. And Tim Bourret is third in P2. In GTLM, it's Jordan Taylor, the first of a couple of Corvettes. Car 3 leads Nick Tandy in 4, with 2 BMWs behind, Philip Eng and Jesse Krohn in 25 and 24 respectively. LMP3 is led by Spencer Piggott, car 74 for Riley. And Indy Doncia, as mentioned, has just taken the lead in the GT Daytona class for 57 Windward Racing. Mercedes out front from the Vassar Sullivan Lexus of Kyle Kirkwood, and Trent Hidman in the Wright Motorsport Porsche is third. That is a Mazda Racing update with 4 hours done. It's RS2, IMSA radio, and we are into hour 5 of the 59th edition of the Rolex 24, with DPI cars running first to 7th. About to be able to grab a word with Joop van Uitert from, sadly, the now retired 29 crew, Racing Team Nederland, and they were looking for a very strong debut, having competed nicely in the European Le Mans Series and the World Endurance Championship. We'll get to Joop in due course. But in the meantime, focus on the battle out front, which is still just over 3 seconds between those old foes, the old rivals of Mustang sampling and the 01 Cadillac Chip Ganassi Racing. Great to have the 01 back in the entry. Remember, Chip Ganassi Racing ran Ford GTs for, what was it, 3 or 4 seasons, not only in the United States but also in the World Championship as well, regulars at the 24 Hours of Le Mans. That programme has come to an end, but it does mean that we get to see the 01 back in the Daytona 24 Hours, which is brilliant to see, and some really quick names signed up by that team as they return to DPI competition. Certainly in the mix with just over 4 hours gone. Ricky Taylor running in 3rd in the 10, and Mike Rockefeller for Allied Cadillac 48 car. Do you know why I said Allied Carpets very nearly? Because I was told to remember that when pronouncing it, rather than saying, as I did for the opening time yesterday during free practice 4, Ali. That's not the right way of saying it. Ally is, and I have always imprinted in my mind that phrase that I'll try and never mention again. That's that explained. Olivier Pla in 5th place, the 60 car from Meyerschack Racing and the Acura, with LMP2 bobbling nicely. Yes, there's an 8-second lead for Tristan Nunez, but Scott Huffaker certainly able to keep the pace of Tristan, 0.3 of a second, and that's all between those 2 cars.
It's been an excellent debut in this championship for Win Autosport at car number 11. Stephen Thomas, a nice clean first stint. He did a brilliant job at the Raw last week. He in very, very wet conditions at the start of that 100-minute race to decide the grid for the 59th annual Rolex 24 at Daytona. He worked his way through into the lead of the class with Stephen Thomas, despite his almost total lack of racing experience. Really, really impressive. And now Tristan Nunez leads the class now. He was a former winner of the Walter Hayes Trophy years ago. That was 2012, I think. And Scott Huffaker, another Team USA scholarship winner from a couple of years ago. He also showed well at the Walter Hayes. So those two are first and second right at the moment in LMP2. Huffaker for the PR1 Matheson Motorsports team, and then Gabriel Aubry, the Tire Motorsport, in 3rd place. He's about 17 or 18 seconds behind them in 3rd position, and then closed in a fair bit on that last lap on Huffaker. Christopher Mee is doing a nice job in the 4th position for Dragon Speed USA, and then Kyle Tilley for Era Motorsport in 5th. And all of those cars, the top 4 on the lead lap at the moment, at least in overall terms. And behind Kevin Tilley is Giorgio Sergiotta, taking his turn at the wheel of the Chetelaga Lara.
Down the back straight, no, big pardon, coming out of the tri-oval and into turns 1 and 2 there's the Mike Conway driven Whelen Engineering car. So this is now at the back of the pack, if you like, in the DPI, but that's okay because they, remember, made that stop that was slightly out of sequence, possibly to put Mike Conway into the car, maybe to get the 31 car out of a bit of traffic and also into a more comfortable position on the racetrack. But the lap times look healthy, 1:38.5. last time around, capable of a 1:34.8. It was done much earlier in the race there. It was a clear road ahead with phases of the race when Felipe Nasr was at the wheel. The yellow Corvette, number 3, another crew for both Corvettes deciding to go with the 3 drivers, and it's Jordan Taylor that leads the class. There's been a moment though for the number 12 Vassar Sullivan Lexus. Now that's the car that is a bit further down the order, not the Kyle Kirkwood machine that is still second. The car 12 is in 12th position in class, in fact, and is being driven by Robert McGuinness in that Dayglow yellow and black machine. Very similar liveries actually for both cars, although sponsorship differs very slightly. It's the car he shares with Townsend Bell and Frankie Montecalvo and Zach Veach. McGuinness having to rejoin. Again, something happening all on his own, and right in front of the 0-1 of Kevin Magnussen. No, for 55 Mazda, I should say. So, a big question mark there, I'm sure, in the mind of Jonathan Bomarito. Which side to go of the spinning Lexus? Do you go on the bit of road that he currently occupies, or aim for that bit and hope the car's no longer there as you stream past? Well, it's a mixture of the two, I would suggest, and Bomarito did incredibly well to deal with that situation. Unsurprisingly, Jeremy, the 12 Lexus is in to have all of that dirt and grime and grass retrieved from the front splitter.
Yeah, I think that might have been on his in lap actually, because McGuinness was due to bring that car in to hand over to Zach Veach for his first ever endurance race. Zach Veach, of course, has been driving IndyCar for the last 7 years, came up through the road to Indy, and is now making the move across to sports car racing, having been dropped by Andretti Autosport at the end of last season, despite bringing a sponsor to the team. That's another story. So Zach Veach now, he's been relishing this opportunity. He's going to be the full-time driver in this number 12 car for Vassar Sullivan with Frankie Montecalvo, who started the race. And it's the car that had a problem earlier on with its transponder, lost a couple of laps making that change. But other than that, the car has been running very, very strongly.
So the 55, do you know, I think there was a moment there in Jonathan Bomarito's mind that I should go left here and hope that the Lexus spins to my right and towards the outer wall, and then very quickly decided to redress and rethink that. Thankfully for the 55 Mazda, which the name of the game at this stage of the race is to keep your nose out of trouble, as we've said many times before. A lot of the incidents around this place, because it is such highly concentrated, are often not of your own making. You are minding your own business for lap after lap, and then all of a sudden that happens right in front. And you need to be on your toes, ready for it. Back onto the banking again goes Jordan Taylor, leading by just a second over the chasing Nick Tandy. So the 4 headlights in Jordan's mirrors. I suppose a comforting feeling to know that it's your teammate acting as a bit of a rear gunner, but don't make no mistake about it. If Nick Tandy senses a sniff of the lead, he's going to go for it, whether it's a teammate or not. And the same can be said for Jordan Taylor if the roles were reversed. Drifting its way out of turn 2 goes the number 4 car, and Lusty Bandit very short indeed as they head onto the brakes and into the International Horseshoe. They're about to be overtaken by an LMP2 car, by the way, and then the next car on the road is one of the 2 GRT Grasser Racing Lamborghinis. That's the one with the orange on it, so it has to be car 19, and 19 is being driven by Tim Zimmermann, the German, currently running in 9th position, and he himself actually trying to eat into something like a 10-second advantage that the number 75 Mercedes has. That's the Sun Energy 1 Mercedes AMG GT3 with Michael Grenier at the wheel of that, Canadian driver for Sun Energy 1. Of course, the Kenny Habul car as well. The Sun Energy livery and Kenny Habul, of course, going hand in hand, and more recently, in more recent years, the Mercedes as well, but with the flame effect on the front of the nose, which always looks very dramatic, and will run by day or night. Speedway turn 3. There's the 48 car of Mike Rockenfeller to put a further lap on the 2 GTLM leaders. to the International Horseshoe, more battling prototypes. That's for the lead, Jeremy, and it's really come down now. Last time I checked, it was 3 seconds. It's now 0.4 between Vautier and Magnussen.
Yeah, Magnussen has really got the bit between his teeth, and he's a very impressive young man. He's been side by side. They're going to split, are they? No. That was very tight as they headed up towards turn 6. I think Vautier able to hang on to that lead, but not by very much. Magnussen last weekend, you know, he hadn't driven this Cadillac until Sebring a couple of weeks ago. The Chip Ganassi team did a test at Sebring. That was the first time he'd driven the car. Absolutely loved it. Then last weekend's race, the 100-minute race, was held in wet conditions. He started the car third. By the end of the first lap, he was in the lead. He had never before driven his car in wet conditions. That current there. He's got the commitment, the belief, the self-confidence. We see a spin there for number 60 car, running in the 5th position. That's Olivier Pla. You don't normally see Olivier Pla going backwards.
So was there some contact to lead into that, perhaps? It is turn 5. Yes, with the Ferris wheel in the background, so it has to be the second of the horseshoes rather than International. But now leaving the scene, what I didn't see is the build-up to that, though, and how Olivier Pla got there. Nice to see the Sirius XM backing on the dorsal fin of that car. Hopefully, many of you are tuned in by that as well to IMSA Radio, RS2, part of the Radio Show Limited network of channels. The Haggerty Broadcast Centre currently has within it Johnny Palmer and Jeremy Shaw, with Joe Bradley working hard on the VP Racing Fuels pit paddock reports. Another 15 minutes gone, by the way, so working our way through the 5th hour. It's 5 to 8 in the evening. 8 o'clock in Dubai, that meant the fireworks lighting up the sky. I think they're a little bit later here, aren't they? But certainly we'll have some evening entertainment eventually with some fireworks. Out of the second of the horseshoes, the 16 Porsche, having actually dropped a couple of places for Trent Hindman. So Charlie Eastwood's got ahead in the TF Sport Aston Martin. Nicholas Nielsen up to 4th in the 21 Ferrari. Trent Hindman, though, well, very much in touching distance of those two cars that have got ahead. Pretty much neck and neck through Speedway's turn 1 and 2. In again, under green, is the 31 car, Jeremy. This car definitely ploughing its own furrow in terms of strategy. You're going in, you're happy with it, are you?
Yes, absolutely. In fact, it was a good stint by Mike Conway there. He managed a total of 22 laps on that stint, which is that's about right. That's certainly good. They went off strategy with that stop for Chase Elliott. I'm curious to know why they made that stop a little bit earlier last time around with that number 31 car, which was slightly unexpected, but right back on schedule now for the number 31.
Good.
Well,
I suppose this early on in the race, this early on in the race, I suppose you can afford to take, a little tweak to the strategy, and actually it doesn't affect things too much. We're way away from needing to back time. Now, can we provide an answer as to how Olivier Pla ended up on the grass? Yes, and it is more contact, I want to say, for the 25 BMW. That certainly looked like the right livery on the roof of the 25. Would you concur, Jeremy Shaw?
Unsure on who it was, to be honest, but whatever it was, from my perspective, that was certainly whoever was driving the GT car. It was not his fault. It looked to me like Olivier Pla just cut across his nose and kind of spun himself out, which is really unusual. That was my initial impression in any case.
It was different from the incident which involved the 33 LMP3, because that was after the corner, if you like, and the BMW, I suppose, could have got out of the throttle. There was a start to the push earlier on, which then continued with driver still on the throttle and had the opportunity to get out of it. That was less the case, less as much the case coming out of the corner on that incident. And as you say, it is down to the DPI driver to allow sufficient space on the exit, be aware of the car that it's overtaking. So that will be being reviewed, make no mistake about it, and we will find out which way it's called. I have a funny feeling it was the 25 BMW again, but I'm very much prepared to be wrong on that. But it was the right paint scheme, that sort of red and white of the 25 as opposed to the 24, which is black with the blue and the red detailing down the side. But Philippe Eng has now brought that BMW in. I don't think that's related to the clash at all. This is more so because it's due a pit stop. But let's wait and see. Unless there's a message, is there? It is. Beg pardon. It is the 25 and the 60. So we've identified the cars correctly. Now, is there a decision, Jeremy?
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, it's under review, so we'll have to wait a little while for that one. But when did that car last come into the pits? I think this is a bit early for that pit stop for number 25. I wouldn't have expected to see it in just yet, I don't think. So maybe there is some damage possibly to the left front of that number 25 car after that contact from with the number 60.
I got 29 laps on Philip's stint. He did 27 before that and 27 before that, so it's about right actually for a stop. I think we can say, I think we can say that's fine and on schedule, and we'll wait for a decision or lack of one from race control regarding the incident. Also getting news from race control that there is another retirement. I don't think we've mentioned the high-class racing car yet. That is out of the race. The car for Dennis Anderson, Robert Kubica, who I'm sure many people will be trying to follow through the race, Anders Fjordbach and Ferdinand Habsburg. Another one, sadly, to put a black cross through, Jeremy Shaw.
Yeah, that's unfortunate. That was a pretty hotly picked car, I think, for success here, despite the fact that the drivers don't have much experience in this racetrack. Habsburg's been here before, of course, but for that team, yeah, it's just great to see that team here first of all, and the fact they were running strong. Habsburg was here a couple of years ago, finished 5th overall. That was in 2018. For Dennis Anderson, Anders Fjordbach and Robert Kubica, of course, this was their first Rolex start, although Fjordbach did do one race at Sebring. It was a couple of years ago in 2019. So he was the only other one with experience of this racetrack. So that's a great shame to see that car out of the race.
And the review has been completed, and the incident involving 25 and 60, Philippe Eng and Olivier Pla, no further action. So if anything, we thought it would be the prototype's driver's fault, but in fact it's been called as a racing incident. Trajectories meeting on the exit of the Western Horseshoe, and continue as you were. I suppose if it was labelled as Pla's fault, then it was sort of self-policing, because he ended up on the grass anyway. A grassy moment again for the same car, the 25. It's really been in the wars over the last 30 minutes or so, and that was coming out of the bus stop chicane. So that's the outlap, isn't it, for Connor Di Filippi on cold tyres. Yes, and he takes this moment to start weaving from left to right to try and get some much needed heat into the new Michelins. Remember, no tyre warmers in this championship, so the first few laps can be very gingerly indeed. And I remember you, Jeremy Shaw, and John Hindhaugh making the point that maybe the Michelins in this particular year taking even longer to come in. So what happened to Connor Di Filippi? Loses the back end into the bus stop and has to take to the grass. Almost cleans out a WeatherTech piece of hoarding as well, the advertising hoarding there on the exit, but thankfully avoids that and doesn't get it wrapped around the nose of the car, which could have spelled disaster for the engine temperature, and thankfully just avoids disaster there. Lost him some time on his outlap, but at least the car is still in one piece.
Yeah, it's not been a good...
Sorry, Jeremy, go ahead.
A good couple of minutes. Yeah, it's not been a good couple of minutes for the BMW team, has it? And all of a sudden, the two Corvettes are a minute clear of the recent competition. Only Ferrari. I think all those cars are due a pit stop fairly soon, as we see one for the race leader, Tristan Vautier. He'd been under intense pressure from Kevin Magnussen, who closed in the the gap from second to first was about 5 seconds, but for the last 7 or 8 laps they've been running nose to tail. But now scheduled service for number 5, 0-1 car back to the lead of race in this race.
So 5 car completing its latest stop, rejoining. Tristan Vautier brought it in. I'd be surprised to see driver change there. Apologies, I should have been paying attention to the stop itself. We'll get that confirmed in a moment for you. Tristan Nunez, in the meantime, still leads LMP2 after 137 laps completed by the second fastest of the prototype cars. DPI's first and 7th, then LMP2's in one solid lump, at least the ones that are still in the reckoning. They won 8th to 8th from 8th to 14th positions, and then the other 3 LMP2s that started the race are now out of it. The 29 Racing Daytona car, the high class racing, now officially labelled as a retirement, and the 81 Dragon Speed USA Orica LMP2. Was a driver change there. Sebastian Bourdais taking charge of the number 5 car. So we've had Loic Duval in for a stint. Bourdais back into the Mustang sampling JDC Miller Motorsports Cadillac. Now onto pit road is Mike Rockenfeller for another stop for the 4th placed car. Ally Cadillac DPI for a tyre change. It's open, but no driver change taking place there. So there'll be a new water bottle, quite probably, just to check on the driver as well, making sure that all the creature comforts are intact. Clean at the screen. But the thing that Mike Rockenfeller will be concentrated on the outlap is how much the lack of grip. Next probably 2 laps, and tries desperately to get heat into the tyres as he leaves pit road. 2 very thick black tram lines left behind the Ally car, and it will head back into the race. GTLM still led by, I say still led by Nick Tandy. He's snatched the lead away from Jordan Taylor, did that a few laps ago, and now built himself a tidy lead of 5.5 seconds. So the silver Corvette now ahead of the yellow one. Davide Rigon, 62 Ferrari, running in 3rd.
Indeed, and the Corvettes last pitted on lap 105 and 106, 104 it was for Rigon. So I'd expect Rigon to be in first of that trio. So we see a pit stop here for our race leader Kevin Magnussen. Is Ricky Taylor going to stay out and take the lead?
Well, that's the question, isn't it? He's labelled as 2 minutes back from this car. So actually maybe he's already been through. We'll get that confirmed in a moment or 2. I think he stayed out, Jeremy, so that will give the lead back again to the number 10 machine. The lights are cleaned on the Kevin Magnussen car. That lurches forward once again. Also on pit road, I thought I'd spotted the Wright Motorsport Porsche making a stop. Just check, 16, yes, is in. The Trent Hidman. Indy Doncia also in, former race leader, and it will be for the 57 car, a new driver as Russell Ward takes charge of the Whitward racing car, shares it with Philip Ellis, Maro Engel, and Indy Doncia, who's just exited stage right from that Mercedes, from the race lead, remember, so they'll back again. Also on pit road is the Audi from NTE Sport. So Andrew Davies bringing that car in for another stop. And how many stops then has the Audi made? That'll be its 5th, which is about right for GT Daytona. Carl Kirkwood yet to make its latest stop. Once it comes in, that'll be stop 5 as well. Kirkwood for Eastwood and for Darren Turner, who hasn't yet come in either. So that's your top 3 currently. 3 front-engine cars in GT Daytona. A Lexus from 2 Aston Martins as the 42 car, the NTE machine, is back on the move. There was a drama for this car, wasn't there, Jeremy? you'll probably remember a little bit more about it, but the NTE car, some question marks as to whether it will even be able to take the start of the race.
Yeah, that's very true, Johnny, because there was an off again at that notorious pit exit here at Daytona. Alametti was going out. Which day it was? Can't remember which day it was now. I think it was on Friday morning. No, it must have been on Thursday. Sorry. And he collected them all there, and did quite a lot of damage to the right-hand side of that car. In actual fact, yes, last night they were still waiting for some parts to be flown in, some bodywork parts to be flown in from Detroit. They finally arrived, and the car was all put back together again, and able to start the race. And certainly, you know, it's been a very respectable first run for that team in the early stages. I think it might be perhaps a lap down to the leaders in GTD, but it's a very promising first run with a car that they certainly struggled for pace with in that Audi through the Raw last weekend, and this week in practice as well.
We tune to
Once
RS2
again,
IMSA Radio. This is the go ahead, Jeremy Shaw.
Just the last car to make its stop on sequence again this time around is a number 10 car. That's the Konica Minolta with Ray Taylor Racing Acura. And again, this car was good. This team always gets good fuel mileage, and on a fairly regular basis, this car is coming in one lap later than some of the other cars. This was a 22 lap stint. So all of the leaders running 22 lap stints DPI on this last run before their previous stops.
Yeah, as you say, slightly staggered. We're not really getting particularly like we're all stopping at the same time. But now that we've had a decent amount of green flag running, then obviously that's going to happen when cars start to pit off sequence, and that rhythm continues on then until, well, effectively the next caution. But we're almost 2 hours clear of caution number 4. So this is by far the longest portion of green that we have had, and long may it continue, generating a brilliant race. It's still very close out front by 4.5 seconds. Sebastian Bourdais separated to Renger van der Zande. 2 Cadillacs out front there, with a rejoining Elio Castroneves for Konica Minolta and the Acura ARX-05 team. Castroneves looks like rejoining in 4th place. So Mike Rockenfeller's got ahead. Mike Conway, who stopped before the next batch of main stops, if you like, the bulk of the stops, he's now inching its way back towards the sharp end of the screen. 5th position for Mike Conway. He's staring at a 30-second gap now until he finds Castroneves. Be a little tighter than that. We'll allow a lap or so to unravel before we properly place Elio in the order. Jonathan Bomarito's in 6th, and then Juan Pablo Montoya, who takes charge of the earlier spinning from the 60 car for Majak Racing when Olivier Pla was at the wheel. But Montoya now drives the 7th placed DPI. Through turn 6 goes Elio Castroneves. Yeah, Jeremy making the point that was a driver change. Quite right, Ricky Taylor getting out and Brazilian Castroneves in. And Corvette visiting one side of their garage in front of the number 3 car. So Jordan Taylor in and out of the car. Nicky Katzberg taking over the all-yellow Corvette C8R, mid-engined, remember. A radical departure in Corvette design. That car in its current configuration debuting in this event 12 months ago. What I haven't fully taken notice of, Jeremy, is whether we've still got the Bunsen burner blue flame emitting from the exhaust from the tailpipes of this Corvette. Do you remember that last year? Got the two of us very puzzled indeed. It was a cool effect, but we were wondering whether it was actually meant to be doing that.
Yeah, good point. Just wait for the crowd. Taking over. Cadillac Jim Cassie drivers through a rotation, now in the second rotation. So it's now Sebastian Bourdais, just taking over 5 laps for the first time. It's Will Duval, who drove the first 2.5 hours, and then a double stint by Tristan Berthier, triple stint by Tristan Berthier, now Sebastian Bourdais. It's been last week, here in the green flag run, and the race is very much settling down. Bourdais just edged his way away a little bit now, 3 seconds down. 0-1 car, so my bad there. So it should it is indeed Scott Dixon, at the wheel of the 0-1 car in second position. Right, Rockefeller is about 24 seconds back in third position, and for second of Castro Pedros in number 10, and then Mike Conway is now back on the attack for a little while after going on down now back because he will be the first of the DPI cars to begin the next round pit stop, and I would expect that to happen about about 12 laps from now.
Okay, thank you for that update. That's Jeremy Shaw. I'm Johnny Palmer. You're listening to RS2 IMSA Radio, part of the Radio Show Limited network of channels, and we're in the Haggerty Global Broadcast Centre with Joe Bradley working hard, getting drivers when they are available, so we can shed a little bit of light onto various narratives just unfolding in what is set to be a very eventful race once again. It kind of always is, and particularly early on as well. We've had plenty of incidents, some of which have delayed, well, favourites. Some cars, sadly, that were pre-race favourites are already out, but that's the nature of this beast, I'm afraid to say. As many times we have lost potential winners early on in the piece, and this race is no exception. It's proven itself to be no exception. Nose to tail running again in GT Daytona, with Aston Martin being pursued by a Ferrari and almost going for a move. That's very tight indeed. Aston has to take slightly to the dirt there, and I think that was De Angelis well aware of the location of the 21 Ferrari of Matteo Cressoni. Now I wonder where Andrea Caldarelli is in all of this mixture, because Caldarelli started this lap actually sandwiched between those two cars. I wonder whether Caldarelli's checked out and is now firmly into 5th position, and that has left, yes, confirming that, in fact Caldarelli up to 4th now, and Matteo Cressoni up to 5th place. So I think that was a Lamborghini and a Ferrari getting ahead of the number 23 Aston Martin, driven by Romain De Angelis, the Canadian driver. De Angelis a little bit on the grass through the second element of the bus stop chicane. Now then couldn't hold back the progress of Matteo Cressoni in the AF Corsa liveried Ferrari. That's the sort of scarlet red with the central body stripe, the white, the green and the red, the Italian flag. Very cool top to the windscreen as well. The sort of visor strip on the top of that AF Corsa Ferrari is almost illuminated in Italian colours. Very, very cool indeed. That's the beauty of a day into night race, is that the appearance of the cars changes with the race. A pillars, C pillars, a little bit of both for certain cars starts to become lit up with LEDs, and you almost have to have a different spotter's guide for the nighttime running from in the day. So, listening to RS2 IMSA radio, and we can now catch up with this VP Racing Fuels pit and paddock report with Ted Giovannis, who's been very patiently waiting on the line. Hi Ted, great to have you with us. It's another Daytona race that roll around, don't they?
Hello, this is Ted Giovannis.
I know it is, and it's great to have you here. Hopefully you can hear me, Ted. As I was saying, another Daytona 24 hours, a race that you really live for. We'll delve into the various ins and
It's
outs
hard hearing you
of the...
right now.
Okay,
We're down near
well, you
turn
tell...
1.
That's a cool place to be watching.
Can we go anywhere?
So Ted's obviously struggling to hear us a little bit
Yeah,
because he's got one of the best
we're
seats
trying to get
in
to
the
a
house. He's trying to get
If you could try and get into the motorhome, that would be great.
Wouldn't it? But he needs to be able to hear us in order to do that. And I would favour turn 1 all day long rather than getting into the RV. We'll give him a moment to head away from the race traffic. In the meantime, the 0-1 car heads through the left-hand kink infield. We'll get back to Ted very, very quickly. We've actually got guests lined up out of the door at the moment, so we'll get to all of those involved very shortly.
Figuratively, if not literally.
Yes. The rumble that Ted Giovannis was enjoying a moment or two ago now thunders its way out of turn 6, generated not only by the 0-1 car, but Scott Dixon turning a few heads, I'm sure, down at turn number 1. He's already on the back straight now and heading into the Boston chicane. 2.2 seconds is the gap that he's trying to slice to a slightly shorter margin. He's done exactly that, actually, coming out of the right and the left kink. 1.7 seconds now. That gap's coming down to Sebastien Bourdais, Jeremy Shaw, who in himself is no slouch.
No, indeed, it hasn't taken Dixie long to get up to get comfortable in that car, has he? He's only done, what, 7 laps now, and he's turned his quick laps already. 1:35.7 last time around for Dixie as he goes across the line to complete lap 149. Got a couple of GTD cars negotiate, but these battles today, and it's two long-time rivals in car racing. They don't really but having that.
Konica Minolta Acura making its way out of the tri-oval and now down into turn number 1. Careful not to get too close to the tyre wall on the inside of that bend, and then having to lever the car from one side of the road to the other to get underneath an LMP3 car, I think that was, possibly an LMP2. Didn't put the tail at the speed that Elio Castroneves is pedalling. But Castroneves taking over from Jordan Taylor at the last stop and producing some very impressive lap times, a 1:36.5 last time around. The car ahead is able to lap slightly faster than that. Actually, Mike Rockenfeller did a personal best Sector 1 time. Sector 1 fairly short, the shortest on the lap, but still getting through there in just under 23 seconds is now lighting up the timing screen. But actually, the quicker laps by far coming from Scott Dixon, who is now only 0.7 of a second off the back of the race leader. Ted Giovannis heading to the trailer, by the way, so he'll be able to hear us much more clearly. We'll get to him in due course. We're also lining up for a chat live from the track. A number of other people as well, so looking forward to that as soon as we get to it. Anyway, the Sebastien Bourdais Cadillac out front from Scott Dixon. And this gap is going to fluctuate to an extent, back and forth over the next stint or so. 22 laps is something to keep in your mind, I would suggest, though, because the beauty of this now 2 hours of green flag running is that we get an idea of what a fuel tank will give you in a Cadillac or an Acura. It doesn't seem to matter too much. What's the Mazda doing? Yeah, 22 laps as well, although there was a 21 lap stint for Harry Tinknell. It might just be that it was a convenient place to stop at that point and hand over to Jonathan Bomarito. but 20, 21, 22 laps is about the ballpark figure to be aiming for. Anything short of that, we should start to be getting a little concerned. To the back straight then goes the number 10 car. In GTLM, Alexander Sims has now taken charge of the number 4 car. That was the Corvette with Nick Tandy driving it early on. Now 9-second advantage for Alexander Sims over Nicky Katzberg and Connor Di Filippi in the best of the BMWs. But we're almost back to the order that was set a few hours ago. Jeremy Shaw, Jules Gounon back in the 62 Ferrari. We heard from him live on air. He's in 5th and chasing once again. 2 BMWs, 3rd and 4th, and the 2 Corvettes that are leading in GTLM.
Yeah, the 2 Corvettes, they've got about 8 seconds between them. All of a sudden, they were running pretty close together for a goodly portion of the race, and now split up just a little bit. Connor Di Filippi, despite that incident maybe 20 minutes or so ago, is just 10 seconds behind the second of the Corvettes in 3rd place. Then the 24 BMW, which was involved and had a drive-through not too long ago, that car is now running in 4th position. All on the lead lap in GTLM and separated in total by around about, well, actually they've just been lapped by the leaders. It's so difficult to say at the moment, but they are all on the same lap with each other at this stage in the race. I think Gounon is about a minute behind the race leader Alexander Sims, and that gap has been pretty much the same after the 62 car also served a penalty much earlier on in the
battle in the DPI category is properly close once again. And they're heading out of the Western Horseshoe. Now, I don't think Scott Dixon has ever been quite as close as this. Now, I know, okay, Scott has only just taken that car over, but when it was in the hands of Kevin Magnussen, he wasn't able to get quite as close to the number 5 car as this. And there may even be the opportunity for a lead change. We're going to head to Lance Wilsey very, very shortly, but don't want to miss the lead change because Scott Dixon has got a cracking run on Sebastien Bourdais here. He had a look into the bus-stop chicane and then backed out of it, but that was one of the best moments to take the race lead for Chip Ganassi Racing and the second of the Cadillacs. Scott Dixon has been working on that for the last 4 or 5 laps, and a really good opportunity, but Sebastien Bourdais saw him coming and wasn't going to leave the door open. So that will provide a perfect opportunity to grab this VP Racing Fuels pit and paddock report. Lance Wilson is on the line from the Sean Creech Motorsport crew. Good evening, Lance.
Good evening. Good evening. Hello out there.
I hope you didn't mind me just holding back on the interview briefly there, because we were set for a lead change in DPI, and I'm probably going to have to cut in a moment or two again when these 2 cars get onto the back straight. But let's try and get a question in before that point. It's been an eventful race for you guys, hasn't it? LMP3, first of all, you're running a Ligier. There was the choice of 2, Ligier or Duquesne, but both seem to be very evenly matched this weekend.
Yeah, I would agree. I mean, we went with the Ligier. I've been running a Ligier here in the States for about, well, since we came into the IMSA. This is about my 4th year running the Ligier. Comfortable with the platform. You know, both are strong chassis. You know, they each have their pluses and their minuses. Then they you know, at the end of the day, they're pretty well balanced out. They're incredible machines to drive. They're a joy to drive, and you know, we're out there pushing it. I don't think we're nowhere close to as hard as we can, but sort of as hard as we need to, you know, at this point in a 24-hour race with all the uncertainties that exist today. So, yeah, no, it's outstanding. It's an outstanding vehicle, and we got great support. Team's done a great job, you know, right from top to bottom. So it's just a matter of, you know, fuel and tires for another, you know, 19 hours and 12 minutes.
I get to follow these cars in Europe on the European Le Mans Series bill, and also the Michelin Road to Le Mans, which obviously provides with these cars opportunity to race at Circuit de la Sarthe for a couple of races in Le Mans week. And we are at a phase where there's been a reset to a certain degree, 4 brand new chassis for season 2020, and the new cars are now available in the States too. So a word on, with you having experience of Ligiers in the past, what about this new car, and also what about the opportunity to race in the main show here at Daytona?
So yeah, I'll go through those one at a time. The new chassis, it's not a quantum change from the first generation car, but it does pretty much everything just a little bit better. So what I mean by that is you got a little bit more aero, particularly up front. It's a little bit easier to roll some more speed into the corners, a little more torque with the larger motor, 5.6 versus the 5-liter motor that we had in the past. So that little bit of extra torque there gives us a little better run out of the corners than we had, previously. And I think that's critical importance in the mixed class racing here in the WeatherTech Series, where, we're sort of slotted between the GTDs and the GTLM cars, make our speed slightly differently, but for the most part we're all getting along pretty well out there. We're all coexisting in peace thus far, and we do our part to make sure that continues. But cars, it's a great car. There's no ifs, ands, or buts. We're very early in our experience with it. We just got our car a matter of weeks ago. Had a little bit of testing to do with it, and then crammed and jammed in as much as we could through the roar and things, and feel good about where we're at. And it's it's a matter of pushing hard enough to be where we want to be, but not so hard to overstress the car, because he's never run a 24-hour endurance race before. So we're pretty soon we're going to be in uncharted waters here.
Lance Wilson, this is Jeremy Shaw in the Hackney Global.
Jeremy, hello, how are you?
Thanks so much for joining us. I'm fabulous, Lance. Great. A couple of questions for you. First of all, you've been doing LMP3 now for a couple of years. I know originally you bought a car just to do some kind of testing, and then the plan was to get back in a GT3 car again, but you were having so much fun in these cars, you carried on with them. You've got to be absolutely delighted that LMP3 has been brought into the IMSA WeatherTech Sports Car Championship.
No, you have a great memory. I had several years of experience in WeatherTech, and never run it a full season because I had a job that was, didn't have the flexibility to be able to do that. But I run the 24 about 9 years or so, and I'm always in GTD. And I was blessed to be able to have some amazing co-drivers over the years. Many of whom went on to become factory drivers and things, and got immense help along the learning curve and things. So I sort of got to the point where I was sort of hitting a plateau in my own skill set and my own ability. So, I bought a P3 car just to sort of get comfortable with bumping up the minimum corner speeds, which is sort of, when I looked at data against the, the fast guys who do this for a living, that's where I was giving up the most ground. And then, once I got the car and got, I'm far from fast in the car, but as I've evolved, my skill set has evolved to drive it, it's an outstanding platform to drive. I can't stress that enough. It's just, I don't want to say it's easy to drive, because none of these things are easy to drive. That's why it's racing. If it was easy to do, everybody'd be out here doing it. But the car itself, it's a great package. It's got, with the new engine, we bumped up about 45 horsepower, got a little bit more downforce. I'm thrilled, and I have, many thanks to the powers that be at IMSA for bringing us on board, letting us run in the show. Hopefully we'll put on a good show for everybody, and this will be the start of big things to come.
Yeah, look. I mean, as you talked about your real job there. You're a surgeon, and I know did you catch COVID yourself? I know you're carrying a COVID awareness on your race car for this weekend.
Yeah. So I'm a physician. I'm a surgeon by training. I'm very interested in oncology and cancer drug development. I did come down with COVID last year, early on in the sort of pre-pandemic, if you will. I most likely contracted it in the February, early March timeframe. At that point in time, it was, I don't want to say it was under the radar, but it was not widespread in the States at all, to the point where masks weren't being worn. Everybody was comfortable flying airplanes. I got sick when I was visiting California with my daughter. Got quite sick, and I just attributed it to the flu. And I went and self-quarantined to not infect my family with the flu. But it's no joke, and that's partly why I'm trying to increase COVID awareness and importance of mask wearing and to have people seriously consider the the benefits of vaccination because in the spectrum of COVID illness, I was relatively mild. But, I'm 59 years old. It was the sickest I've ever been in my 59 years of existence, and I would not wish it upon anybody. So, I'm doing what I can, through social media, through fan engagement, through all the media outlets I can. And again, I'm not, I have no interest in telling anybody what to do or what they should do. That's not my, goal or objective here. My goal or objective is, simply to have people speak to the people who are in the know, speak knowledgeable people, and then make the right decision for you and your family, because the stakes are very high. It's not a hoax, it's not trivial. I've been through it. It's no joke. And so, yeah, we've been giving out a lot of swag, we've been giving out face masks, shirts, all sorts of, gear for people. And again, my expectations are fairly modest, but if I can impact a couple of people who impact their families and they, take it upon themselves to, learn about vaccination and pursue it, then, racing aside, I won this event. Because, that's a far greater good at the end of the day. As much as I want to win this race, finally, having the opportunity to potentially have a greater, far-reaching impact is far more meaningful.
Dr. Lance Willsey, thank you so much for joining us. Thanks for everything you do, and have a great run for the rest of this Rolex 24.
Well, thank you, and I can't thank you folks enough for having me on, and again, let's put on the best show we can for you guys. Look forward to seeing everybody in person when it's reasonable and acceptable. Take care, everybody. Thank you.
That will be great, won't it, for us all to get back together and have one big party to celebrate motorsport. Lance Willsey here on RS2 IMSA Radio, part of the Radio Show Limited network of channels. That was another Neatly Racing Fuels pit and paddock report with both me, Johnny Palmer, and Jeremy Shaw. So, time now in Daytona, working our way towards the end of another hour. It's 25 minutes to 9 o'clock, and another 5 minutes then we'll be into hour 6, would you believe, of the 59th running of the 24 hours of Daytona. And just before we get to that junction, a great opportunity to catch up with somebody else. So we were talking about COVID, obviously the perils of it, and trying to avoid where possible. And Ted Giovannis is now on the line with a conversation that, well, hopefully won't fully focus on the COVID virus, but Ted's doing some incredible work as part of his foundation. Good evening, Ted Giovannis. Let's make sure you're there, first of all.
Yes, I am. I'm here.
And how is spectating at turn number 1? How is spectating at turn number 1? That sounded superb.
Well, it's very loud because it's right coming into the braking area, so the cars are full song, except still the paint down there, the yellow paint that's off to the right. I mean, off to the left. So no, it's pretty loud and it's pretty spectacular because you can see the cars, you can see brakes, and it's convenient for me because our pit's down there, so that's sort of, you walk around the corner and there we are.
Well, brilliant for you to add to our effects, Mike. We thank you for that, and also thank you for heading back to the motorhome as well, so that you can hear this call a little better. We really must ask you about the amazing work that you're doing as part of your foundation, researching the COVID virus. We've just spoken to Lance Willsey, who was explaining to us that he actually caught it in the very early phases when it first arrived in the United States. And like the UK, like the rest of Europe, it was a learning process, was it not, to find out how to battle this thing?
Yeah, and what we're doing is the work that we're doing is more secondary right now to actually battling it. What the folks that we're working with are doing, they're creating a mathematical model to evaluate the effectiveness of all the vaccines. And in order, it's a worldwide collaborative that's the center of which is at Indiana University. But those folks are trying to be able to model the effectiveness, which means that they're waiting for information and data that once the vaccines are out there and you can get some data on the following of the patient, to be able to see which vaccine is working for more effectively for what kinds of patients. My personal suspicion will be that they might find out that certain vaccines work better for certain pre-existing conditions, like diabetes or some lung disease. So that's what I think we're going to do. So ours, the results of this work is more downstream still and may not happen for another 6 or 8 months. Whereas the developers of the vaccines, the 2 drug companies that are out there, but there's 2 more in the pipeline, they're trying different approaches to actually to deal with the virus itself, meaning once people get it, or preventing it. And I think the vaccines will tell them more about how to treat patients. So that's sort of kind of what we're doing in a nutshell. So it's coming, and that's sort of where it is. But we started this project last year.
Well, that's really interesting information. Thank you for fleshing some of that out for us. I suppose it's all of that research and your day job that then allows you to come motor racing at the weekends. And really great that we can kick off the calendar as scheduled on the traditional weekend for the 24 Hours of Daytona. You're in the 64 Porsche with Team TGM. 18th place, I notice, in GT Daytona at the moment, but it's very, very early days, and GT Daytona is such a close category.
Yeah, it's very competitive, and there's a lot of great drivers that are matriculating into that particular class. And so, we decided that we would just wade in and see what we can do for working through the series. We wanted to. We wanted to race at the 24 hours, and that sort of teed us up. And so what we did is we partnered with Wright Motorsports to help us with the car, and then we melded some of our crew members to do the over-the-wall parts of it, and we plugged our 4 drivers, one of which is myself, but there's Matt Plum, Hugh Plum, and Owen Trinkler, and they're just plugged into this, and now we're on a rotation through the driver changes, just like most of the other teams.
Well, I make this your first venture into the main WeatherTech Sports Car Championship, and is this your first 24-hour race, therefore?
It absolutely is. That is 100% correct, and that's why that's why we needed to partner with somebody that actually knew the particular car that we were going to race, but also knew the 24 and had experience with it. So it shortened our learning curve a little bit. We still have a steep learning curve, but it shortened it a little bit. And my co-drivers have all driven in the 24 before. I'm the only one that hasn't.
So you'll be given the 3 a.m. shift then, won't you, to do a good couple of hours in the night, right?
They've been pretty gracious to take some of the weight off of me, but no, I'm not really going to drive the 3 a.m. shift. But I've done 2 stints already, and so I may be off for a while, put it that way, and then come back in the wee hours of the morning.
Well, it's always good, I think, to make sure the nerves are put aside as early as possible to get in the car and get those all-important opening shifts out of the way and opening stints, and the car very much still in one piece. So we wish you well, Ted, for the rest of the race. I'm going to allow you to go possibly back to turn 1 now to enjoy some more race action, but thank you for spending a bit of time with us here on Inter Radio to offer some updates, not only on your foundation but also on your team's efforts so far.
Yeah, thanks very much for the opportunity, and we're really excited and happy to be here. So thank you, guys.
Wonderful. Ted Giovannis there from Team TGM, and we'll keep an eye on how that Porsche continues on. It is currently in 18th place, as I mentioned. You're tuned to RS2 Inter Radio. That was a VP Racing Fuels pit and paddock report. It's Johnny Palmer and Jeremy Shaw in the Haggerty Global Broadcast Centre. At the end of another hour, that's 5 completed. This is your Mazda in-race update, and we're at a point where 1 or 2 cars are choosing to pit, including the race leader Scott Dixon in the 01 Cadillac DPI. So at the end of 163 laps, that car is in and should mean that Helio Castroneves will take the race lead for Konica Minolta in the Acura DPI. Third position, although now on an outlap, Mike Rockenfeller. So Dixie will probably feed back in to second place, possibly third. Rocky may slip behind Sebastian Bourdais at this rate in the Mustang sampling Cadillac. Bourdais has already completed, at least his car has completed 8 stops. The 60 Juan Pablo Montoya Meyershank Racing Acura is in 5th position. In the LMP2 category, it is the 11 car that leads, being driven by Matt Bell. Gabby Aubrey for Tower Motorsport is second, and then it's Fabian Schiller for Dragon Speed, in also an orange car 82, with Nicolas Lapierre pitting for the R1 Matterson Motorsport, car 52. GTLM, still the story of 2 Corvettes followed by 2 BMWs. It's Alexander Sims in the 4, the silver Corvette, that leads the yellow Nicky Katzberg driven C8R. Then Connor Di Filippi in the red and black BMW, ahead of the black, blue and red detailing number 24 Beamer of Marco Wittmann. And then it's Jules Gounod in the 62 Risi Competizione Ferrari. 4 LMP3s altogether on the timing screen. 20th position down to 23rd. The class is led by car 74, which is the Riley Motorsports Ligier for Scott Andrews. And second is Jan Clary in the 33 Sean Creech Motorsport car, the same car that Lance Wilsey drives, incidentally. And now, well, Andrea Caldarelli was showing signs that he might do this. He now leads the GT Daytona class with the Paul Miller Racing Lamborghini Huracan, car number 1, ahead of Klaus Bachler, the young Austrian driver for Wright Motorsport. That's the Porsche number 16, ahead of Matteo Cressoni for AF Corsa, the Ferrari 488 number 21. That's the latest Mazda in-race update here on RS2 IMSA Radio. All pit stops taking place for the DPIs, including for Helio Castroneves, so I'm not sure he ever did actually get to the lead of the race, Jeremy Shaw. We had Scott Dixon in and out. Helio, I'm sure, is not going to be taken away from that car just yet, so he'll stay in. But I don't think at any point he got the lead, did he, in the number 10?
No, I don't think he did, not quite. No, because he was quite a long way behind. The 2 leaders have pulled about 25 seconds over the number 48 car, which was in the lap previously. And the number 10 car, I don't think quite got into the lead on this rotation, but it has led some laps in this race. We've had 5 different leaders so far. Number 31, number 10, number 60, number 5, and the... well, number 5, because is that... Oh, and a 0-1, excuse me, that was the other one. The 5 cars have led the race, and we've already had now about 20 lead changes.
Yeah, frenetic stuff, and 7.2 second lead rather belies the closeness of the race to this point. We have had it as high as 14 seconds. The 5 car back to the top of the pile. Who knows for how long for, but yeah, there's a 7-second gap emerging in 1 or 2 places now, first to second and second to third, as Castroneves rejoins. That'll probably extend further actually by the time the Brazilian goes through the next timing loop, as the 21 Ferrari is back on the move. Now this is a challenge for second position in GT Daytona, and around the outside of Klaus Bachler is going to go Matteo Cressoni. Scored us in second place as they went through the tri-oval. That was a fantastic bit of driving. You don't often catch Klaus Bachler out like that, but obviously the Ferrari got a much better run through Speedway turn 4 and sweeps across the nose of the Wright Motorsport Porsche to take second place. They are trying to hunt down Andrea Caldarelli, as a moment or 2 ago the Konica Minolta Acura that was in pit lane, was there a fumble here when they were refitting Michelin tyres? I don't think they quite had their new tyres in the right places, and there was a delay. Oh, the rear right just would not go on. Now, of course, it was lowered down onto the rear right way too early because it was still being lined up and correctly located. It just isn't going to go on at all, and this was a huge delay for the 10 that we're only picking up now. Finally, those lug nuts are located and the wheel gun can be applied, but got to be at least 10 seconds, Joe Bradley, lost in that pit stop for car 10.
Yeah, Johnny, and 10 seconds might not sound like a lot of time in general terms, but in motorsport, that's a lifetime. Think about that. You are lapping a tenth of a second, 0.2 of a second quicker than that car. Just think how long that's going to take to gain that 10 seconds back and re-establish yourself. It's an absolute lifetime, 10 seconds in a pit stop. That, Johnny, is why you see these teams practicing the drills of tyre changing and refueling these cars. And also, that's why we see the drivers practicing all the time, swapping the drive seats. It's very, very crucial. Even in such a long motor race, we'll see by tomorrow afternoon, this race could very well come down to less than 10 seconds.
Yeah, and yeah, that may be the race being won or lost right there. The beauty of this race, of course, is the safety cars, and as long as you stay on the lead lap or within one lap of it, there is always the chance of your race to change direction once again. So staying in touch is key, but they were kicking themselves down at Konica Minolta Acura ARX05, as the team is called, with the new for 2021 Acura, because Helio Castroneves had driven a brilliant stint, and then with a slight fumble with the location of the tyres and then getting that rear right on, there was a delay. The mechanic in charge of the airline thought that everything was done, but there was no arm in the air from the rear right mechanic, and that's the reason why it needed to be lifted again for that wheel to go on. But it was just a sort of spiral effect, really. One bad thing happened and it was followed by several others. Back in the race it goes, 4th position for Helio Castroneves, and he's about 18 seconds, nearly 19 seconds adrift of Mike Rockenfeller. It could have been half that were it not for that mistake. And the gap, if anything, this time, Jeremy Shaw opening up a little bit. OK, that's just on the last lap, but about 0.8 of a second gained by race leader Sebastien Bourdais. Maybe hit some slightly favourable traffic.
Yeah, it could be. But yeah, that delay for the number 10 car, once again, that stayed out a little bit longer than some of the other cars. That is the 7th pit stop for that car during this race, and it's done the least amount of pit stops. The two leading cars, number 5 and 01, have both done 8. But yeah, there's been quite a few cars in this race have had to do earlier on in the race, they had to do an emergency service stop, which counts for an extra pit stop, even though it doesn't cost them a lot of time. But for the number 10 car there, that really did cost them a lot of time, because they came into the pits, yeah, around about, I think 8 or 9 seconds behind the number 48 car. And are now, yeah, I reckon you're right, about 10 seconds it cost them during that stop. It seemed like a lifetime.
Corvette on the inside of the 57 Mercedes, the former class leading GT Daytona AMG. Doncha for Winward Racing at the wheel. So you lead the Class 1 moment, half an hour later you're back down to 13th. That is the nature of the GT3 division, GT Daytona as it is called in the IMSA WeatherTech Sports Car Championship. The number 4 car of Alexander Sims, trying to keep its powder dry. Very busy behind this car. So Sims will be grateful to have worked his way through traffic, and has cars up ahead as well. It's in these moments around Speedway turn 3 and 4 that you're having to judge those cars in front. Are they cars that you're likely to be catching before turn 1, or are they prototypes, which you really don't have to worry about because they will just disappear into the distance? But all of this is being computed by these world-class sports car drivers as Sims comes from the high line at the tri-oval across the, it's normally a solid white line where the Daytona 500 happens, but it's been painted out to offer as much grip as possible. There is a problem here though for the number 19 GRT Grasser Racing Lamborghini of Albert Costa, and it looks like it could be a tyre down for the Huracan GT3. The Spaniard Costa, he is below the double yellow line on the flat apron there, and working his way back to pit road. So seen this many times before. The car has to continue on at as high a pace as possible. I'm looking to see whether there Michelin tyres are fully inflated. It looks fine on the right-hand side. There may be an issue on the left, possibly with suspension or a Michelin tyre which is on its way down. Tough to tell, but it's just about going to make its pit stall. There's another car rejoining, which is the 25 BMW, which very nearly caught the back of the Lamborghini Huracan. When you're making your stop and then rejoining, you have to be so much aware of what is going on around you, because cars heading into the pits aren't necessarily going to be up to speed. This could well be fuel, Jeremy Shaw. The car's not even going to make it stall. And here come GRT Grasser as a team. 4 guys to try and get the car into the right place. I think it is on the dregs of that fuel tank. So they're all now pushing the GRT Grasser car to its rightful position. I've got a sheet of paper here that tells me how far down pit road GRT Grasser Racing Team are positioned, and I make it boxes 32 and 33. It's box 32 for car 19, but it must have stopped closer to stall 22. So 10 boxes further down, and finally GRT Grasser can get the airline plugged in. It goes up on its internal jacks, and the fuel can now go in. Joe Bradley's got a thought on what's going on for GRT.
You know what? That was an
Something
almost
else.
perfect fuel stint, wasn't it? To get that,
It looks like it, yeah.
To get that close to the pit box. Maybe the next time they calculate a refueling stop, they'll maybe not just they'll not shave that razor blade as finely as that. I think that almost worked. They saw it in a cartoon, thought it might work. Well, lads, you were close, but not quite close enough, and that's going to cost them time, isn't it?
It is, but credit to the team, because they were alert. I'm sure Albert Costa had been on the radio saying, I'm not going to make this, guys. I might need a bit of manpower to help me the final few feet. And so it proved. Now, question is, how many laps had Albert managed on that stint? And we need to compare and contrast with the previous one. I make that a 30-lap stint for the Spaniard, and Tim Zimmerman did a 30-lap stint before as well. And they've actually managed a 32-lap stint prior to that. The 34-lap one I'm going to discount for Misha Goikhberg, because that will have involved at least one caution. But we have been green certainly all the way through Aidan Reid's stint, which was sorry, that's the wrong car. We've skipped a line now. But we've been green for all of the previous stint for Tim Zimmerman. There we go. And the 30 laps that he was able to do. So that's a strange one, because Albert Costa has, maybe he ticked on to 31 laps. Maybe that is the difference. You can do 30, you can't do 31. And that will be jotted down in the notebook down at GRT Grasser Racing. No doubt about it. I suppose these are the things you need to find out during free practice rather than in the race. But at least he didn't get stranded all the way out on the back straight and cause a caution and have to come into pit road on the end of a tow rope. It wasn't as disastrous as that. That's one of the mistakes that you will hopefully only make once in the race. Sharp end of the field, DPI led by Sebastian Bourdais. Still this 7-second lead back to Scott Dixon. Then it's nearly 21 seconds the difference to Mike Rockenfeller. So although he's in a Cadillac as well, it looks like the Mustang Sampling and the Chip Ganassi Racing caddies seem to have the pace over the third place car just at the moment. Fastest laps set earlier on in the race would echo that thought. The fastest lap of the race was set by the number 01 car, a 1:34.657. That was done early on. And a 1:35.0 offered by the number 5 car as well. The fastest that the 48 car has managed is a 1:35.4. But we also need to concentrate on things like average lap times as well through stints that are generally 22 laps in the Daytona prototype category. Elio Castroneves was running 4th. Pipo Derani for Whelan Engineering still just about in the right position. Bear in mind the lap is just over 1.5 minutes here, and Pipo trails the race leader by 1:19. So another 15 seconds or so lost for the Brazilian, and he's running close to falling off the lead lap. It's in control at the moment, but just needs to catch the odd bit of traffic here and there, and that could get dangerous. Juan Pablo Montoya is right in the zone for falling off the lead lap, might already be there. He's a minute and 36 off race leader Sebastian Bourdais, so we'll be looking in the mirrors for an approaching Bourdais as the race leader. Matteo Cressoni in the 21 car has worked his way, by the way, to the sharp end of GT Daytona. He pulled off a spectacular move around the outside of Klaus Bachler to take second place, as it was then, and now has managed to make his way to the very front of GT Daytona. Bachler's followed him into second, and Charlie Eastwood for TF Sport is running in third place in the 97 car, with Roman De Angelis for the Hardham Racing team in the Aston Martin. So how many different manufacturers can I offer you in the top 5? 4 with the Ferrari, a Porsche, 2 Aston Martins, 3rd and 4th, and the Mercedes in 5th position. So we're nearing the end of this little segment of our broadcast with RS2 IMSA Radio, but if you're just joining us, perhaps thinking, right, settling in for a full night of action, and I know there are many of you brave enough to stay up for the full duration, then there is a great team on its way to keep you company with the return of John Hindhaugh, who's been a busy man this weekend. He didn't allow me to call free practice 4, and got 3 odd hours here as well. So John, you will have been chilling out in the green room, but ready to get cracking again now.
How do you know what colour the road was, Johnny?
Green rooms aren't ever green, have you noticed that?
Never ever, never ever. Oh, you've had plenty to talk about there. Yeah, that's been a really interesting session.
Yeah, there's been 1 or 2 clashes that we don't like to see, and I did like the fact that race control actually allowed some of them to just lie, and they were almost self-policing in the case of Olivier Pla. You're going to get that in the early stages of Daytona. I get the feeling that the race just needs a period of time to settle down, but we're there now, and I mean, you'll have the stats for how long this green flag has gone on for, but this is what I craved really after that succession of yellow.
You absolutely read my mind, because you've had 2 hours and 41 minutes under green flag. Johnny Palmer, Joe Bradley, our VP Racing Fuel Pit and Paddock Reporter, and Jeremy Shaw was joining Johnny in the Paddock Global Broadcast Centre. Now it's a quick personnel change here on IMSA Radio, RS2, on the www.imsaradio.com website. Sound and vision there, and of course at the circuits, 107.9 FM, Sirius XM, Sirius 217, that's 216, excuse me, XM 202. So welcome to our broadcast at the Haggerty Global Broadcast Centre for the first time for 2021 and the 59th running of the Daytona 24 hours, the Rolex Daytona 24 hours, and say hello to Nick Damon.
Hello, John.
Very interesting. Very interesting. Not all plain sailing for people, of course. Acura's having problems with their wheels going on and off. And these are, I mean, both the teams who have got the Acuras, very experienced, but they just seem not to be able to get those wheels located.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting the gremlins that turn up in the first races of the season. I know they've done a 100-minute race, but it's nothing there. They don't get the same temperature build-up or the same sort of panic build-up as you do when you're already nearly 6 hours into a 24-hour race. And yeah, there may have been little tiny amendments to improve things. There's often seen sometimes when you get the heat of battle, you don't actually know those improvements. Whilst, yes, perhaps reducing a half a turn of nut to make it slightly quicker or a wider thread. And we've seen this happen before in F1. Sometimes those nuts and the mounting, whilst it seems great at room temperature, suddenly in the heat of battle, just a little bit out of tolerance, and you've got a huge problem with a sticking wheel, sticking nut.
Shea Adam is back with us as well. looking
Hello.
after looking after just shut up, man. That's just a hotkey that I have here. I can make it happen anytime. Look, hang on, here we go again. Here we go. Now.
Hello.
There you go. Shea Adam back with us as our VP Racing Fuel Pit paddock reporter. Quite a lot of people on Twitter. Shea, just what, about an hour or so ago, maybe a little bit more now. At IMSA Radio, excuse me, using the hashtag R24 Radio, asking about the aftermath of that nasty looking incident for Turner when fuel got flung all over the place. Bill Oberlin was down there at the time and was affected by that. What can you tell us about those that were close to that fuel spillage?
Everybody is fine. Bill said that he was covered in gas. It burned him really well, but he went straight back to the motorhome, took a shower, put some fresh clothes on. He's ready to go again. So everybody, thankfully, okay from that one. And yeah, scary moment for people watching at home for sure, to see a driver that they know and love as much as Bill in a situation like that. It's not something you ever want to be a part of.
He did have his racing helmet on, but the visor wasn't all the way down. And when people sometimes talk about penalties being handed out or warnings being handed out for, you know, incorrectly attired people at a fuel stop. All right, Bill was a bit further away and not involved directly in the fuel shop, but that just goes to show, doesn't it, how seriously you have to take safety all the time in a pit lane.
Oh, absolutely. And it's the reason, to be quite honest, that I don't stand in front of a car when it's leaving the pit box, because if it's going to drag any equipment with it, it's going to go in that direction. So you always want to be standing behind the car.
Some nasty ones down through the years. Little whoopsie for Corvette number 4, which has just gone a little bit too long at the International Horseshoe, first of the infield hairpins, and that is Alexander Sims, who's leading GT Le Mans category. I would suggest they're probably not anymore. I think that was his teammate that just sneaked through there. They've got about 100 seconds on the chasing pack, which is led by Conor De Filippi for BMW Team RLL in the 25 car. Let's do a couple of updates. First of all, some penalties coming in, or a penalty at least, and an update on Lexus as well, Shit.
In terms of the penalty, it was just called for car number 9. That's the Fast Motorsports Porsche, and the beautiful flag representing Team Canada. Matt Campbell was a little bit late on his pit commit to come down the pit lane, and he didn't exactly get lined up where he should have been. Race control noticed, they called a penalty. That is a drive-through. And a lot of people might have noticed that the number 12 Lexus, which is a full season entrant, by the way, for Frankie Montecalvo and Zach Beach, went behind the wall a little bit ago. I've just received information. They sustained damage to the radiator due to debris on the track. So that car back in the garage needing quite a bit of repair. It's already fallen down to 18th in class, and in another 6 laps, it will lose that last place position to the still recovering number 111 of Stein Schothorst behind the wheel right now, Grasser Racing Lamborghini. That car has been suffering with electrical gremlins all race meeting, not just the race today.
Shea Adam with that VP Racing Fuel Pit and paddock report. Still just on 18.5 hours to go. We've been, well, officially, Nick Damon, in the dark. Well, you and I have been in the dark for a very long time, but officially it was sunset at 1 minute past 6. It's now, what, nearly 10 past 9 here at Daytona. We're seeing a little bit of a pattern emerge now, and this is the meat of the race right now. 13 hours and 11 minutes from sunset on Saturday tonight to sunrise on Sunday morning, and this is where the race, you've got to tick off the laps at this point, haven't you?
Yeah, I mean, the thing to remember really about Daytona, and it is unique in so many ways, but this way particularly because it's not actually dark. It's completely different. It's a proper, completely floodlit circuit. It's in the bowl of the NASCAR circuit, and the difference in lighting between this and going down the back of the Mulsanne Straight at Le Mans is, well, night and day.
Very good. I see what you did there.
You I mean, and obviously I'm getting tremendous deja vu because I was here all last weekend virtually. So I've turned hundreds of laps around this track with the teams in the massively entered iRacing event last week. But you do, because you obviously that models the light, and it's honestly in the dark, it is 90% as it would be in the daytime. Unlike other tracks, it really is a case where it's 40 or 50% of visibility. You're thinking and looking for different references. You can use all the same references because it is just floodlit, and and the difference in speed is nothing. You have the same amount of confidence, especially when you go around over the front stretch. It's lit up like it was Wembley Stadium on a cup final evening.
And again, very different from what we had a couple of weeks ago, where we had 13 hours and 16 minutes of darkness at the Dubai International Circuit for their 24-hour race. It's one of the great joys. Ian Ferris has, I hope he's still listening before he disappears. He's hoping for the 79 Porsche leading in class, and same with the 97 Aston when he comes back. He's heading off to bed, presumably in the UK or Europe at the moment. And Matt is finally on his lunch break, 2 a.m. in the UK. So that's, 10 minutes ago. So still listening in, I hope, Matt, watching and listening. Great stuff from Daytona. That's at IMSA Radio, hashtag R24 Radio. One of the great joys, Nick, is the fact that there are many 24-hour races around the world, and for goodness sake, we cover a great amount of you. When I first started going to Le Mans in '89, which that was 1989, Shay, before you say anything else. Thank you. Yes. That was the big 24-hour race. Daytona had a 24-hour race, and that was about it. Nowadays, there are plenty of international 24-hour races. Quite a lot of them are televised. We do quite a lot of them, but they all have their own unique character.
Yeah, I think it's interesting that, I think this is part of the move away from motorsport being just one thing, which is Formula One, and the ability for the televising and the following and the fandom of endurance sports car racing has enabled these marquee events to be set up. And we start with Dubai with 24, then we would normally have Bathurst with Daytona, then you have Bathurst with 12, and then we have the other big events, of course, which is Nürburgring 24, which is crazy, and the Spa 24, which is again completely unique in its single class environment. So you have these sanctions in the season, in a normal season when the dates are running, where you have these big endurance events, and you're absolutely right, John, they have completely different characters. I would say that my feeling is that Daytona in many ways is the most successful. I think it's the one that's the biggest crossover. The ability, if you're lucky enough to be here next year, you can get up on the bank and you can see 3/4 of the circuit, 7/8 of the circuit, like brand patch. You don't have the cars disappearing off into the boondocks for 4 minutes and coming back again. There's all the activity going on in the infield. It's a real spectator event, and kind of combines that American razzmatazz with endurance racing.
No, it's a perfect description. Well done, Nick Damon, who's in the Haggerty Global Broadcast Centre. So just a wee while ago, Alexander Sims went off at the International Horseshoe. He's since pitted in the number 4 Corvette, I think. He's been out there. Yeah, that was a 32-lap stint, Shea, but he stayed in the car.
Yes, he did, and he did owe us a trip down the pit lane. He had been out on track for more than 50 minutes at the time of his off, so perhaps it was just the tires giving up at the end of maybe a very long stint. But yes, his pit lane visit was due, and Nick Katzberg just made a trip down pit lane too. So the 2 Corvettes are running on a slightly different strategy than the 2 BMWs, who are running on the same strategy than the Ferrari. It's interesting that they're all pitting at different times.
Something for you to get your teeth into straight away, Shea, now that you're back on duty as our VP Racing Fuel Pit Paddock reporter. Sebastian Bourdais has just come in and left the pits. Actually stayed aboard the number 5 Mustang sampling Cadillac, but only did it's a bit short. It's about 4 laps short, I reckon, of what we've seen him do. And is that Rockefeller just come in as well. That's interesting. Rockefeller's come in a few laps early in the Ally Cadillac. So Bourdais in the Mustang sampling car came in after just 18 laps on the racetrack, where he's been doing, his last stint was a 21 lap stint, 22 for the car before that, and they were full green flag stints, weren't they? Yes, they were. And as I say, Bourdais after 18, Rockefeller, I think that was just a 17 lap stint for Rockefeller, so something odd going on with those guys. Just skim back for a, well, Bourdais stayed in the car, so that he's going for what will amount to a triple. What I don't know, and Rocky stayed in as well, what I don't know, Shea, and you weren't on then, I don't know whether Seabass took tyres at his last stop, and I wonder if he was just feeling the pinch a bit on the tyres as he got towards the end of the stint. As I say, maybe 3, 4 laps shy of what we might have expected to see. Something perhaps for you to chase up, if you don't mind.
Tyres would be the least of their worries once you get to night time with the temperatures dropping.
Hasn't dropped that much, Nick. 17 Celsius, Michelin tell us on the track, and when I was, 3 hours ago, it was 19. Now, all right, it's 2 degrees is 2 degrees, but as any tyre tech will tell you. But the temperature, the air temperature, holding up really nicely. That's still at 17 Celsius at the moment. So, it is. I mean, don't forget, we're not at 9:30 yet, and we've got the long night still to come. Shea will have been looking at the forecast. You are normally our weather fiend, Shea. What is the overnight forecast and into tomorrow morning for the environs of the racetrack?
Well, and when you say I'm your weather vane, does that mean you stick me on the roof and I spin in the wind to tell you which direction it's blowing?
Pretty much. Yeah, pretty much.
Oh, okay. Yeah. No rain expected whatsoever. Our low tonight, it's supposed to get down into the 50s. I believe it is 61 right now is the last Michelin update I had on the weather, going down to a low of potentially 54, 55 tonight. So not much variation in the temperature. Clear skies overnight, a little bit of cloud in the morning, especially toward the end of the race, have to say, and a high of 75 tomorrow. So basically ideal conditions to be in the pit lane.
Another car that I need to check up on, which was doing very nicely, thank you very much indeed. No, it's all right. Why is Nico Lapierre dropped down? Has he just stopped as well, Shane?
No. That car spent quite a bit of time, 5 laps at a minimum behind the wall. They were working on something, and I have sent a text to find out what was going on. Haven't heard back yet, but I'll let you know when I do.
Sean was asking about that car a couple of 3 minutes ago. Hashtag R24 radio, Rolex 24 radio. That's where the R comes from. Go ahead.
There seems to be a bit of malaise amongst the P2 cars. I mean, we've lost 3 already, or 3 struggling badly in the 29, the 20, 29, 20, and the 81. It may well be that. Now we've got a problem with
81 is a definite retirement. I saw that early on.
Is this the first outing? I think it is. This is the first competitive outing for the newly power-reduced P2, isn't it? With the 6.6% reduction in horsepower, about 40 horsepower, to make it a little bit slower down the straights at Le Mans. So they have got a slightly different version. And I know it being gearbox problems and everything else, but they have got a slightly different version than was here last year as they adopt the new regulations.
Well, you say that, but of course, LMP2 was always hamstrung, or has more recently been hamstrung in IMSA terms, Nick, because when they took them out of the class with the DPIs, remember the year when Core Autosport were battling for the championship, and then the next year they took them out, and IMSA were the first people to actually apply their own BOP to take them out of the top class effectively. So that's a fair point, and if I'm honest, I don't know the full technical answer to that, but somebody will. At IMSA Radio, if you don't mind. Hashtag R24.
Again, just talking about the virtual world, they made that change halfway through the practice week, and interestingly, it didn't. It only took about a second off a lap time. You think it would take a lot more, but and about 5 miles an hour down the main straight.
You said that made them easier to drive in some respect.
Yeah, definitely did. The thing to remember is, and it's interesting, you may lose 40 horsepower, but if you think Daytona's a really, really interesting track, you look at it, you think this is so simple, and then you actually realise, no, it's really difficult. Think about how many times the car is accelerating at very low speed, coming out of 1, coming out of the horseshoe, coming out of 5, coming out of 6. That was called the Western. So you've got all those acceleration, but you're coming from a very, very low speed. At that point, your traction limited. Doesn't mean you've got 1 million horsepower, because you're limited by what the rear tyres can put through. In some ways, having a slightly softer power to it makes it a bit easier. Yes, you're losing on maximum speed, absolutely, and also a bit of acceleration from higher speed. So that acceleration, for example, out of the bus stop. But it's not. It'd be more. I'm sure it'd be more. Have more effect at other tracks. I think it may have more effect percentage-wise at Le Mans, for example, and some of the medium-fast circuits. But this track is really, really interesting design. Its simplicity is non-existent. It is one of the most difficult circuits to get right, because there's a challenge. There is a challenge every corner, apart from turn 3 and turn 4, where the only challenge is as NASCAR 3 and NASCAR 4. The only challenge is not running into the back of somebody who's going slower than you.
We just had a pit caller down the lane, and that was the Mazda, Jonathan Bomarito, getting out of that car, and Oliver Jarvis getting back in. So that's all 3 of the Mazda drivers who have now rotated through the car, not necessarily rotating in the car, thankfully, but it was fuel and tires for Mr. Jarvis as he heads back out onto the course, and also into the pit lane. Another English driver that we love a lot, Oliver Gavin, in his yellow car, but this time it's GTV, and this time it is a Lexus, so the number 14 making a trip for fuel and tires as well. And the 01 is in the pit lane. This is Scott Dixon from the lead of the race, will be staying aboard, but getting 4 fresh Michelin tires as well as fuel. And I've just had an update back from the 52 machine. That's the PR1 Matheson LMP2 machine that people were asking about. They were leading the class. They've dropped 5 laps. They had to change the intake, so that's why they dropped back so far. But apparently they are pushing like crazy for the remainder of this race. Remember, this is one of 2 cars that Ben Keating is driving in the race today. So even if this one isn't his winning speed, which who's to say it's not, there's a long time to go and 6 spots that they can get back. He still has to drive in the Aston Martin, of which he's done 0 driving time so far.
Scott Dixon following up a 22 lap stint last time around, with a 21 lap stint that time around. So did Dixie get out of that car? He didn't, did he?
Nope.
Right.
There was no crowbar used. Scott still behind the wheel.
A very fine driver in anything he gets behind the wheel, and anything of which he gets behind the wheel. And he goes out for his triple then, and a triple is going to be something in the region of 105 minutes, so just over an hour and a half. So not the Ironman stint that our colleague Paul Truswell would be looking for. All the best, Paul. I'm sure you're following along back in Woking. And what was I looking at before I distracted myself there? Oh yeah, so still a bit of an odd one, because on that last pit stop cycle, the Mustang sampling Cadillac, the Cunningham and Alta Acura, and the Ally Cadillac, so that was 5, 10 and 48, all did 18 lap stints rather than the 22 or 21, 22 lap stints that they've been doing. All right, I know we're talking 3, 4 laps, we're talking, 7, 8 minutes, but it just seems a bit odd that they did that. Shane, what do you know about those pit stops? I'm not suggesting there are any problems, but have you been able to find anything out from the team as to why they pitted 4 laps earlier than they have been?
Many thanks to Kyle Chura, who said that from both teams, and he did check in with both teams, they were regular stops. So they were perhaps a little bit early, but there was nothing untoward and nothing to bring them in early.
Okay. Chura there. Tom Firth is asking what's happened. I meant to mention this earlier on, actually, because while I was away from the mic in the Haggerty Global Broadcast Centre, I noticed a couple of people talking about brake changes and how and who might do brake changes. Is it only going to be GT Le Mans? No, is the short answer. And Shay, there's a specific regulation for brake changes for LMP3, which includes during the race an 8-minute stop, which is mandated for them to be able to take their time and do a safe brake change. Is there somewhere specific in the race that has to happen, as far as we know?
Well, there isn't a time where they say it needs to happen now. Like, everybody needs to stop on the track now and come into the pits now and make this happen. No, it does need to happen before, I believe it is 20 hours of the race have been completed. It might be 22. I'll have to double check myself off the top of my head. But we've just had a very rare occurrence. Oliver Gavin has been given a penalty. He, much like Matt Campbell, was a late committer to the pit lane entry and was given a drive-through penalty, which he is serving right now.
Right. Shea Adam, our VP Racing Fuel Pit and Paddock reporter.
A busy time at the penalty box, aren't there? There's a lot of people who are with a lot of minor infringements. I've been watching most of the race, whilst it's been going on, and the number of people who are getting called for silly things like rotating their wheels off the ground and a bit of speeding and everything else. I think this is really where I know you perhaps is a bit more relaxed is the wrong word, but you have a chance to make up these penalties because the will at some point unfortunately be a full course yellow. But it doesn't. It just feels a little bit of casualness has crept in, perhaps rustiness, ring rustiness almost. But it's surprising to see how late the last season ended, John.
Well, and in our Porsche Keys to Race, which seems like 5 minutes ago, when we were doing that in the Michelin Pilot Challenge, in the Michelin Countdown to Green, when in fact, it's nearly 6 hours ago, our first point was rule, and she's been, in fairness, on a bit of a soapbox all the Raw week and all this week as well, and it's it does show. And a drive-through here is actually, all right, you're not going to lose a lap, Nick, but it's slowing down, getting into the pits, speeding up through that Nadji pit exit that runs alongside turn 1. It's been, that's going to lose you half a lap, maybe a little bit more. Imagine trying to make up half a lap on the track. That's the better part of a minute for most of the classes.
Right, with these very, very tightly grouped various classes, when they're actually out there in free running, the difference between a great lap and a bad lap in the tier area is 0.2 or 0.3 of a second. It's just ridiculous to give it away. And you can think about it, if we go back to what Jeremy hates most of all, but a code 60 concept, that time you never get that time back. So perhaps you are a little bit more careful. I think. I'm not saying anyone deliberately does it, but perhaps there's a little bit less focus on some of those things. We think, it's fine, we're 6 hours in, we've got 18 hours, we'll get that back at some point, move on. Whereas there's not that kind of laser focus when you come to the pit, they make sure I do A to B to C. Somebody isn't counting him in, somebody isn't counting him out, somebody isn't saying, limiter, somebody isn't saying don't drop, don't rev the car. These are very good professional teams, but even they will have different priorities during the frenetic activity.
Nick Damon, he's alongside me, John Hindhoff, in the Haggerty Global Broadcast Centre. And whilst we've got plenty of racing this weekend, by Monday afternoon, you will be missing your fix of racing, won't you? So 1 o'clock Eastern, at 6 o'clock in the UK, it is our post-Daytona edition of the Haggerty Inside Track in sound and vision. responsible adult, lining up some of the headline makers for that. An hour's worth of chat on the Haggerty Live portion of Haggerty.com. You can ask the questions as well of the panel. That's the Haggerty Inside Track, 1 o'clock Eastern, 6 o'clock in the evening UK. Hopefully you'll join us for that. Although what kind of state I'm going to be in, I'm not really built to be in front of a camera anyway. Never have been. As my much loved father used to always tell me, face for radio, son. And he was right, wasn't he, on that in so many different ways. But after the 24 hours, I'm not sure.
It was even more radio-like, weren't you?
Yes.
We faced the radio of the 1950s, probably. You know,
HD radio, mate. By that time.
I'm just slightly not tuned very well, radio. You know, just slightly off.
That is very true. Very true. Down the inside at turn 1 for our race leader, Sebastian Bourdais, who carves his way through a bit of traffic. His lead now some 15 seconds on Scott Dixon in second. He's got half a minute on Elio Castroneves in third, so Cadillac Acura. Elio back with Acura, although of course the new team this year, Wayne Taylor moving over to the Acura DPI. Acura Acura committing their future in prototype racing to IMSA into the new rule set in 2023, which in motor racing terms, Nick, it is really just around the corner. If you're going to be having your new DPI 2.0 with the mild hybrid, what the ACO are calling LMDH, if you're going to have that at this race in 2023, well, you have got to commit about now. And other manufacturers who are thinking about doing this, we don't know what GM are doing yet, although Laura Wondrup-Klauser, who was on Midweek Motorsport on Wednesday, said everything was still on the table. But you're going to have to commit pretty soon to get that programme up and running.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we've already had very positive news from both Audi and Porsche. We know that there are other manufacturers who are going down currently the non-only route, though Liefenhaus and the LMH seem to think they're going to get an entry into this event as well come 2023. But yeah, there is a change coming in the chassis of the P2 cars, which of course the LMDH will be based upon. You need to be able to start assessing those. You need to start assessing exactly what you can change, what you can't. I think it was in that item we did a few weeks ago for the prototype panel on Radio Le Mans. I mean, the teams have been focused for a long way, but they themselves are spending a couple of months evaluating the unknowns pretty much before they start sticking a bit of metal into a milling machine or vacuum forming some carbon fibre, just to make sure they start with the basic concept correct. Because that's the key thing. You can make a misstep on day one and then you'll scupper for several years. So they're all thinking what to do, but suddenly, they're looking at huge competition. It's pretty obvious, and I'm going to say because I can, that there's going to be a GM brand in LMH. It just depends which GM brand it is, whether it's Cadillac or Corvette. And therefore, you're going to have at least 4 major manufacturers. If you haven't had Mazda commit yet, they probably will. In the American side, and then when you get to Le Mans, there'll be 8 manufacturers at least. Because people who try to pick up LMH, and suddenly we go from a situation of abject despair about what the hell's happening next in the top level of endurance sports cars in June, to having an abundance of riches, which is the main reason why all these people are driving P2s, as we said many times before.
Yeah, and you've made a very good point there, which I think I just need to pick up on, because people might have sort of just let it wash over them. It's going to be the new DPI, IMSA's new concept, which I think rather sensibly the ACO have took on, which we're calling LMDH. That is based on the new LMP2 cars, which we've not seen yet. So if you're a manufacturer, even if you're a current DPI manufacturer and you're linked with one of the 4, obviously you're most likely to go with the one you've already linked with, but not necessarily. You might want to see that new version of LMP2 before you make a decision?
Yeah, if we look at the way the last launch went, it very quickly became obvious that in its native form, the Riley had problems. Then it was found that the Orica was quicker in a number of situations than both the Ligier and Dallara. And despite getting an extra bodywork amendment for those two chassis, they've never really caught up with the Orica 07. And that was pretty evident almost, I would say, from the second or third race, once everyone was running them properly. And suddenly, we saw everyone grabbing it. It got to the point where the Ligier distributor for the UK had to drop the car in all sports to run the Orica to be competitive. So you don't want to start scuppering your chances straight off. But on the flip side, the car that's leading this race is based on the Dallara. So you think, well, if the basic core elements are right, and it's just the aero, which was so nailed down by the AEC, that's the problem, then really, do we, you say, go with the partner we know, bet the devil we know, assume they'll be able to get it right? Or will someone come with something so trick that you don't have that as the heart of your car, you're starting with doesn't have to be much, a 0.2, a 0.5 second deficit.
It's Nick Damon in the Haggerty Global Broadcast Centre. Let's head to an interview now. I'm delighted to say that joining us live from the very centre of the action is the man at the head of IMSA. That's John Doonan. President Doonan, thank you for joining us here on IMSA Radio. How are you, John, and Happy New Year?
So good to hear your voice. Happy New Year to you all. So wish you were here. Every time I think hearing you in the PA, I could just go find you somewhere in the broadcast booth here on site and give everybody a big bear hug. We miss you guys being on site.
We are. We're there in more than spirit, John. We're there in volume as well. I know you've been on the line listening there, and obviously we're talking about LMDH DPI 2.0. An IMSA concept that has rightly and sensibly been taken on across the sports car world as one of the options for the top category of prototype racing. This week, a big announcement from IMSA that as of this race next year, that GT3 will become the top class of GT racing. No GT Le Mans, but GT3 Pro. Is that IMSA once again taking the lead and saying, look, we think this is the way to go? Or, by all means follow, or are you just at the moment not looking any further than the North American market and IMSA's own constituents?
Well, it's always in our strategy. We're hoping that with our partnership with the 18 auto manufacturers that run in IMSA, we can take direction certainly from them and what their interests are to grow their brands and use IMSA as a marketing tool for their vehicle platforms. And it seems like the right time. Discussions have been going on for probably 18 months or so, a little bit before I arrived here. And given the conversations, given the transition the GTLM and GTE globally are going through in the next few years, based on feedback from our OEM partners, we felt like it was the right time. And we're in constant communication with our partners at the ACO. In fact, as you know, Pierre Dion is here today, and they've been working in unison with us. So we'll see what happens for global convergence on GT down the road. But we're excited to be able to kick it off here at Daytona in 2022.
Well, I never thought I'd be standing part of that press conference that we had at Daytona about prototype convergence. I really had to nip myself when we were doing that one. If we can get that thorny issue of GT convergence sorted as well, that would be extraordinary. It is clear to me though, John, and you've more than hinted at it there, that the manufacturers understand why this needs to be done. And talking to Doug Feehan last year now, back end of last year, albeit maybe a bit before that actually, middle of the year after they won their 100th IMSA race here on the 4th of July. Laura Wampentrop, Klauser, his successor, also saying they absolutely have to look at it. So there's no worry for you that manufacturers like GM so important to IMSA, who don't have a GT3 product at the moment. There's no worry that you're going to lose them and their factory involvement?
No, similar to, and you referenced LMDH, we had a great announcement here last year, and I think similarly, the market speaks, the feedback from manufacturers currently to meet competing in GT, whether it's GTLM here or GTD, all in favor of that same type of convergence eventually. We're going to kick it off here. We're excited about GTD Pro. It provides some of the manufacturers the opportunity to continue to have a factory-supported team, if you will. But we also know that most of those manufacturers have a business model around customer racing. So it's a little bit of the best of both worlds when you break it all down. And there's a lot of smiles and a lot of fist bumps in the paddock this weekend with people excited about the opportunities that GTD Pro and GTD will bring next year.
Do you know, I've said this down through the years, John, and you and I have talked about this before you were in the position that you hold right now. One of the things I really like about IMSA is, on a decision like this about GTD Pro, this effectively reverses a policy that IMSA put in about factory all-pro teams in GTD a couple of years ago. And it's not a U-turn, this is reacting to events. This is knowing what's going on in the world of sports car racing.
You're exactly right, John, and we have a little bullet point in our mission statement is let's do what's right for the sport, and certainly that involves our partners, but our goal is definitely with this to do what's right for the sport. The manufacturers competing in GT3 spec cars or with GT3 spec cars globally, they're readily available by many of these brands. I mean, we have 9 manufacturers in GTD with us on a pretty regular basis here in IMSA. So the volume and the inventory of cars is available. Some of them, the manufacturers want to showcase those cars in a pro format. But again, customer racing is big for most of them. And our hope is that we even have a driver lineup requirement across the categories that you could see everybody fighting it out at the last few stints of some of these races in GT3 cars, that specification globally. So we're really excited about it, and can't wait to see what 2022 holds in that regard.
It seems to be all good news at the moment, John. I mean, it's a terribly difficult situation for any business in motorsport, whether it's IMSA as a series or the teams in the paddock is a business. But we had Toyota in the Michelin Pilot Challenge for the first time yesterday, and the new Supra GT4 GR led some laps. You've had the electric TCR car with Augusto Farfus whizzing around doing demonstration laps, and I know Marcello Lotti, the man behind TCR, has been at Daytona having some meetings as well. I mean, you guys relentlessly pushing forward at the moment. It's a really good time.
It is, John, and before the event, both with our staff as well as all the community here, we talked about how much of a privilege it is to be able to be racing right now, and we're taking that very seriously, and there's a lot of responsibility around it. But you're right, we have kept our heads down, and outside of having to wear masks in the paddock and try to remain socially distanced and all the things that we need to do to operate these events safely, we have been pushing forward, and we're in business, as Mr. France said this morning at our chairman's breakfast with everybody separated in a big room. We're in business. When the green flag dropped on the Roar before the 24 and so many events this weekend, it tells you that we're pushing forward. We're thrilled with having 18 manufacturers. You mentioned Toyota joining us and Michelin Pilot. Acura made an outstanding announcement on Tuesday. relative to their commitment to LMDH. And the driver lineup here and this event going on right now, there is a lot to be thankful for. And like you said yesterday, the ETCR Hyundai Veloster and was really special to see that launch out of pit lane yesterday. They took me back to my slot car days.
Oh yes, we all love electric racing. I think Damon is on the line, obviously a big exponent of electric racing for and proponent of electric racing for a long time with RC racing as well. John, I know you don't have an awful lot of time this weekend, so thank you for taking some of it with us. And I know you'd like to watch a bit more of the racing, so I'll let you sneak away before, I'm sure, another appointment. But thanks for joining us here on IMSA Radio.
So glad to be with you. Thank you and the entire staff for what you all do. We're so pleased to have you with us. Always a key part of the weekends when the session's open and you all come on air. It means so much to us, and I know it means a lot to your listeners. So thanks to everybody, and can't wait to see you all at an event real soon.
Huge audience, John, I can tell you, just from the Twitter around the world at the moment, watching and listening in. John Doonan, the president of IMSA, thanks for being with us again, and thanks to Nate Siebens for setting that up as part of our VP Racing Fuel Pit Paddock Report. Cheers, John. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Well, we've gone through another racing hour there and went a little bit over, but you'll understand why we, when with John on the line, we stayed with it. The Motel 6 prototype is facing the wrong direction in the bus stop at the moment, but has refired and goes through the cutout. So slightly late for our update. Don't think there's any damage on that car. Shea Adam, the update 5 minutes ago would have been exactly at 6 hours if we hadn't been talking to Mr. Doonan, and got chopped by, well, just ran deep, almost ran into the back of the GT car that was going around that LMP3 car at the moment. May have been a tiny bit of contact there from the 7-plate LMP3 machine, and that car sitting well down. That is the excuse me, it's the 38. Yeah, it's the 38. My apologies why I put that into LMP2.
I will say, and I'm a great fan of multi-class IMSA racing, but I really wish, as someone who's kind of coming to it, once a year, effectively working on the event, they'd adopt the same thing as Graventic do, whereas each of the classes has their own set of numbers.
Oh, I agree. I should have said that to John. Doonan, absolutely.
Right. Number 7. What on earth group is number 7 in?
Well, it's 38. It was in 7th position.
I know.
That was the thing. And I think it's borrowed some parts from one of its IPC LMP3 stablemates there, because it didn't look like that at the start. Shea, give us an update on these pit stops, and then we'll do a quick rundown and some Michelin Endurance Cup points from about 5 minutes ago.
Well, we haven't had the Michelin Endurance Cup points. They've been awarded, but the standings, I suppose you would say, have not yet been posted online, so I will stay afoot of that and give those to you when we get the opportunity. But as has become the routine, the BMWs are into the pit lane first. It's Connor De Phillippi staying aboard the 25. That is the red one. And Marco Wittmann, let me see, he has done a double. Well, Connor's also done a double, so Marco could be staying on for one more. As far as other pit stops that we've had during this segment, it's actually been fairly quiet in the pit lane. Actually, everybody listening in to Mr. Doonan and not wanting to do pit stops while he's been talking, so that's been nice. And when we get those points, I will let you know.
So let's take a look at the standings. A little bit late after our interview and chat with John Doonan. Is Scott Dixon, who still leads then from Chip Ganassi Racing. Cadillac from Cadillac. Mike Rockenfeller in second is nearly 40 seconds behind. Elio Castro Neves next up in the number 10 for Coddington Minolta. That, of course, now an Acura for the Wayne Taylor team. Fifth place Cadillac is, fourth place is the number 5 Cadillac of Loic Duval. Another 30 seconds further back. Decent battle for second and third, actually, between Rockenfeller and Castro Neves out on the circuit. Mazda in fifth, the number 55, Ollie Jarvis back in that car now. They've cycled through their drivers. He's 26 seconds adrift from fourth. And Montoya in the number 60 Meyer Shank Racing Acura has... Now, is he off the lead lap now? Yes, I think he is. In fact, I've just realised that as we were doing that, Rockenfeller and Castro Neves, they swap places. So that's Mike Rockenfeller, who's just passed Castro Neves for second position. In LMP2, Matt Bell, that's UK Matt Bell, the tall fella, originally from Newcastle upon Tyne for Win Autosport, leads in LMP2 from Fabian Schuller and Dragon Speed. 45 seconds the gap between the leading 11 and the number 82. Number 8, John Ferrano for Tower Motorsports in third place. They're all Oricas. Chettilar Racing and Roberto Lecorte, who's obviously doing the same shift pattern as I am. It seems like I talk about him every time I do the rundown. The 47 car is the fourth placed in LMP2, and that's a Talara, of course. Then the other chassis, Ligier, Salih Yolik, the Turkish driver, RWR Eurasia in fifth, and the top 6 made up by Ryan DL for Era Motorsport, but he's about another 20 seconds back. GT Le Mans, Corvette, notwithstanding Alex taking a little bit of a grassy route round the international horseshoe a little while ago. I've paused for a moment. She will give us an update on that. She knows exactly why I've paused, but we'll do the update. 2 Corvettes, first and second, 9/10 of a second between them. They're racing in team, racing as a team at the moment, it would seem, and they've pulled out nearly a minute on Alessandro Pagidi for Risi's Ferrari, the 62 in third, ahead of the 2 BMWs, which are another 44 seconds back, and have for the first one, which is Conor De Filippi now behind the wheel of the 25, and the 24, the black car, is another 15 seconds behind that. LMP3 has Scott Andrews behind the wheel of the Riley Motorsports Ligier, that's the 74 car. Yann Claret for Jean Creech Motorsport, the 33 red, white and blue car, is in second, with Kenton Cook about a minute further back in third place. And in GT Daytona, it's Klaus Bachler for Wright Motorsport, 6.5 seconds ahead of Roman De Angelis for Heart of Racing team in that Aston Martin Vantage. They've got 3/10 on Lucas Stoltz, who's gently been moving up the field for Sun Energy in their Mercedes AMG GT3. It's the number 75 car that's been run by Gradient this weekend. And in fourth place, well, in fact, that's just changed because Bachler is just pitting. But behind that, it is, so Lucas Stoltz now goes to second. Root is in fourth, and it's EF Corsa with the 21 in fifth. That's a Ferrari, of course, and Pfaff Motorsports, Matt Campbell in the 9 Porsche in sixth position. That's how it stands at the moment. Clumping of cars around the circuit. That's your Mazda in-race update for this this hour. And Shea, the reason I paused when I was talking about Corvettes is because we had a slightly unhappy looking pit stop for another GTD Ferrari, not the one that's running in the top 6.
That would be the 63 Scuderia Corse Ferrari running this weekend. Brett Curtis, Ryan Briscoe, Marcos Gomez, and Daniel Serra. It's a handy quartet among the 4 of them. Marcos Gomez, who took the car back out. It wound up being no big deal, but it did look a little bit iffy on their stop for a moment. But no harm, no foul, so no point in talking about it. At least Scuderia Corse would be happy if we don't talk about it.
Yes, didn't look at all happy. Nick Damon has got another guest for us on the VP Racing Fuel paddock reports. Who have you got, Nick?
Yes, thanks in fact to a hangover, believe it or not, from Joe, who's got a chat with Austin McCusker from the Riley Motorsports Ligier in P3, but of course he's got a bit of a story about how he's actually driving in this race at all.
Yes, that was unexpected for you, Austin. Welcome to IMSA Radio.
Thank you for having me. You know, it was a little bit of a late thing. I wasn't pushing to run the Rolex at all, but we had we had some IMSA scholarships, so I have to thank IMSA for giving me the opportunity to run this race, and then Bill Riley as well and Jim Cox to have faith in me to run their car.
You've already got plenty of stories from this race, you and the team. Give us a quick précis, a quick summary of what's going on since the green flag dropped 6.25 hours ago.
So we had some issues in the beginning of the race with Jim. He one of the drink bottle tubes came out and sprayed water all over the car, so it shorted out one of our dash panels, so that set us back some time in the pits. And then I got in the car and just kept my head down and tried to push for everything, get through traffic as quick as possible, and keep the car clean to give it off to Dylan Murray, and just chipping away at it, hoping for some yellow sometime soon.
It's a 24-hour race is a particular mindset, Austin, because if you do have those issues earlier on, there's plenty of team managers who've told me down through the years, if I'm going to go out, I want to go out before 9:30, 10 o'clock at night, because then I can get away and find a decent restaurant. I don't want to go out with a terminal problem 2 or 3 hours before the end of the race. And if I have a minor problem, I'd rather have that at the beginning as well, because at least it gives us a chance to fight back. I suppose that's the mentality you've got to have.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, we got hopefully our one problem out of the way, and we'll see if these LMP3 cars can last until the end. And everyone was expecting each car to have its own problem, so we'll see how all these cars fare in these conditions, and hopefully us getting this problem out of the way at the beginning of the race helps us towards the end.
As a driver, how has your mindset changed then as we're going through this race? Obviously, you're very excited. You're here. It's a competitive class that you're in, but everybody's got a chance. Then you've had a problem. When you get back in again, what are you going to be looking to do, and what do you expect your team manager to be telling you? Are you going to be driving to a time, to a fuel number, or what? How's that work?
I mean, we're just pushing as hard as we can right now to get as many laps back. I think we're 13 laps down, so we need to just keep our heads down and make a good strategy and get as many laps back as possible, and hopefully we'll be there in the end.
Nick Damon here in the Haggerty Global Broadcast Centre has a question for you, Austin. Nick, go ahead.
Austin, one of the great things normally about being in a multi-class sports car race is you know where you stand. You know who you're faster than, you know who you're slower than as a class. And you would know you're slower than the P2s, the DPIs, and you're faster than the GTDs. It's kind of a unique situation here that the GTEs are making a very similar lap time in a very different way. How difficult is it to negotiate the traffic and around those GTE cars?
As far as our standpoint, it's the cars. It's a real endurance race for our cars, and we're trying not to fight with the GTLMs. It seems like in practice, our car could be a bit quicker on one lap, but I think their race pace is a little bit better than ours. So we're just trying to, let them by as plenty as possible. We know they race hard, and we'll push you around. So just navigating through the GTD field is really our biggest thing.
I'll ask one more and let you get away, because I know time is precious and getting some rest is precious as well. You've got LMP3 experience, Austin, IPC champion in, I was going to say last year, 2019 now, of course. that must be at least some help for you for jumping into the car this week.
Yeah, definitely. It helps immensely. It is a new spec car for this season for IMSA, so it's a bit different, and it's Ligier, which I've been used to the Duquesne the past couple of seasons that I've been running, but it's definitely helped my jump into Riley Motorsports. We've been pushing and developing the car as much as possible with me in it.
Austin, thanks very much for that. Best to you and the team. Drive well, drive safely, and enjoy.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
It's BP Racing Fuel pit paddock report with Austin McCusker. They've got a long, hard drive back in that car, Shea Adam.
They do, and speaking of a car that has a long, hard drive back, Alan Metney is guilty of speeding into the pit lane, and I know that it was him who was in the car because he was in the car both as it came in and as it left for the 42 NTE Audi. 5 clicks over the limit necessitates the drive-through, and then a subsequent penalty just popped up. Car 42, same vehicle, exit the pit lane with hose or tool attached. That also is a drive-through. So 2 drive-through penalties coming for the 42 Audi, which currently runs 16th in category. That's going to drop a little bit.
Very self-assured young man, Austin McCusker. And very indicative now, Nick, of young drivers seeing the opportunity in sports car racing and making a shift early. We'll come back to that thought in a minute. Shea Adam, you've got an Acura in the pit lane.
I do, and it's pink and black, which means that it's the Meyershank Racing Acura. I think that is AJ Allmendinger, who is getting strapped in behind the wheel of this car, his first stint of the race, as Juan Pablo Montoya has jumped out, meaning that they have now cycled through all 4 of their drivers as AJ kicks it into gear and leaves. No problems there, no chance of stalling, which is good. We haven't seen the same of some of the other drivers as they get in for their first stint, but AJ very self-assured behind the wheel of this Acura, and he sets out for what should be a triple or even quadruple stint into the night.
Shea Adam, Nick Damon and me, John Hindhaugh, in this stint as we go through another clock hour. 10 o'clock Daytona evening. Is 10 o'clock evening still? Is that late evening, or have we moved into the night?
No, night.
Okay.
Definitely.
Right.
Because the nightclub would open at 10, wouldn't it?
I don't know nowadays, mate. Pubs still
No.
don't they?
Well, I don't know now. Nothing seems to open, obviously, but normally, yeah, you're right. When I talk to Ash, the clubs don't even start till 1. You know, we always say if we touch in bed. In my day, we were in bed for 2 hours by then.
Yes, well, that was 1927, of course. Just
Charlton,
after...
never out of fashion.
Absolutely.
To answer your question,
yes,
before,
about young drivers.
Yeah.
Jeremy talks about the opportunities, and I mean that goes to what we were seeing with John Dooner, president of IMSA, and you know, more factory teams. GTD Pro, that's another great opportunity for drivers to earn a living.
Yeah, I mean, I think it goes back to the kind of the long conversation we've had over many, many years about the concept of a professional racing driver. And your chance of becoming a professional racing driver in open-wheeled racing is, I would think, optimistically, there are 35 people or 40 people being paid to race open-wheelers in the whole world. And that's a lot of Formula 1 drivers are being paid one way or the other, a couple or 3 in IndyCar and a few in Super Formula. And outside that, everyone is bringing money in one way or the other. It may be through an affiliation, maybe a sport, but to actually get there and earn a living wage, you need to in some form of sports cars. And obviously the good news is that within endurance racing, there's been a number of potential job opportunities opening up in the new GPI2 and LMH as more factory teams come on board. We've now got a whole new class of GTD Pro here, which is going to need to pay people to drive in their cars because they're pros. That's the definition, which I assume is going to get adopted with voracious pleasure by the manufacturers. We've been waiting to do this cost-effective works racing for a long time. So you've got a chance, and of course then you have the other way of earning a living within sports cars, which is being the quick young or quick medium-aged person to a gentleman driver. There are hundreds and hundreds of slots around, IMSA, SRO races, and up and down and Le Mans and everything else around from there. So if you sit there and realise, well, I haven't got my father's not a billionaire, so it's quite unlikely I'll make F1 now. It's a case really of looking to how you can make a career where you will be racing in these fantastic events, but also not paying to do so.
There's a big discussion at the moment in single seater, particularly Formula One's circles, about that very thing, about the dearth of opportunities for even very good drivers who have got personal sponsors and could take money to a team, but couldn't buy a team. Very, very interesting. Out on the track at the moment, that battle. The battle for third has heated right up. Helio Castro-Neves in third at the moment for the Acura team, Wayne Taylor team, and Kamui Kobayashi is right on his tailpipes there. There's barely half a second between them. It's the 10 and the 48. They're just going through the tri-oval now and down into turn 1, and about 50 seconds up the road, there's now only 2 seconds between Scott Dixon, who leads for Cadillac Chip Ganassi in the 0-1, and the 5 of Loic Duval. And our leader then is just going through the bus stop at the moment. And so about 2 seconds, Duval in arrears there. So 2 decent battles at the front of the field. Scott Dixon, I think we said that was his triple stint in the car. About 40 minutes, these stints, Nick, and requiring, I mean, we've got 49 cars here, and there's concentration required everywhere. 4th stint, my apologies. It's a quad stint for Dixon.
The thing is, I mean, the interesting about the quad stint, I mean, it's not, I don't want to start, dissing fantastic professional drivers running for 160 minutes, but it's not quite the same, is it, as those quads and quints we saw at Le Mans, where they did the whole thing on one set of tyres. The fact you're getting new rubber every time.
Well, there might not be. There might not be. There might be doubling.
They may as well. I think, didn't Shea say they've now got enough sets to change every time? And of course, with the IMSA rules, which I don't think are as good as the revised Le Mans rules, you can do everything at once. So there's no penalty in changing tyres. It takes out that strategy element. So I think it is a great feat of fitness, and more importantly concentration, because you are constantly having to go past cars. The car density of 48 cars on a 3.5 mile circuit is considerably greater than 60 cars on an 8.5 mile circuit. So it's a lot more work to be done. It's not going to be quite easy on turns 3 and 4. But I think if these are professional drivers, this is what they should do. And I'm not amazed by it, but I am, obviously impressed by the overall basic talent of these guys.
Just to reiterate, the interesting thing about, or the significant thing rather, about those positions was that before this round of pit stops, and they're not on exactly the same laps into the pits, it was the Loic Duval car in the hands of Sebastian Bourdais and then Loic that was leading by about 10 seconds. Scott Dixon, now on his 4th stint, came in just about when we swapped, I think, maybe a little bit before that, and he came in 7 laps later than Bourdais did. So it had been Bourdais battling with Dixon, but remember there was that slew of cars, the 5 Cadillac, the 10 Acura and the 48 Cadillac, who had those 18 lap stints previous to that. So that's when Dixon went through and went longer. That was end of 2 stints ago. Then he's done another 22 and 7 laps better off on fuel than Loic Duval. Now, in fairness, Loic's just got in that car, but he's done 12 laps in that car. So we're seeing something going on. What I haven't been able to work out quite yet is where that time went, because their lap averages, Dixon's and Bourdais, were almost identical, certainly to the 10th on their previous 22 lap stints. So was there a fumble in the pit stop? That's going to be the question.
car do you drive a change, we'd have to say, because that's the only difference, isn't it? One's changed drive, one's just on a complete service. So you would think he'd be lost in the pits. It's notable, actually, that whilst we were looking at that, Loic had a bad lap in traffic and lost a couple of seconds, and now the following lap, it's gone the other way, and Scott's lost a couple of seconds to Loic. So it's you know, there's just a problem of taking a single lap snapshot in an endurance race with so much traffic. It can get distorted one way or the other. And the point you made earlier, John, is that the fact is the racetrack is not a solid thing. It's a constantly evolving area of tarmac. We know the temperature's dropping. We know that there's more rubber going down. We know that so it's just because it was like this 37 minutes ago, 40 minutes ago when you got out here last, it doesn't mean it'll be like that now, even though it's still dark, if that makes sense. It's still moving around.
Yeah, the pit times on those last pit stops, Shea, there was actually nothing in it, certainly not that 10 seconds.
1.3 seconds was the difference. Scott Dixon's pit time from pit in to pit out was 1 minute 19.960. Loic Duval, 1 minute 21.223. The fastest of all of them was actually Elio, 1 minute 18.790. So that's not where the time went.
Don't forget, though, that we saw, and this is where I think 10 seconds could go quite easily here. We saw Dixie just take fuel, Shea. So that means he stayed on relatively warm Michelin tyres, whereas Loic would have got a new set, a sticker set, no tyre warming of any. All right, you can warm the tyres by leaving them out in the sunshine. Well, it's been dark since 6 o'clock. And those first couple of laps, and we saw it after a couple of the early cautions, those first couple, 3 laps, it's not dicey, but clearly, I remember Jeremy saying at one stage, oh, I would have expected that they'd been going a bit quicker than that. They were a couple, 2.5 seconds off where they were. It takes time to get the temperature and therefore the pressure into those tyres if you've just banged on a new set, and you're at a disadvantage as a new driver as well. 111 Lamborghini, no, 19 Lamborghini. Sorry, I defaulted to the 111 because that is the Grassi car that's had so many problems. He's got a fire in the back of the car. It's just off the bus stop area. Thanks, Nick. I think he's actually driven straight through the bus stop. Now that might have just been unburnt fuel as he tried to refire the V10. So
yellow.
So we have gone then into another full course yellow. That'll be our fault, obviously. That is the 5th full course yellow after 3 hours and 50 minutes. 3 hours and 50 minutes. He's right up against the wall, and I think he's probably come through the cutout at the bus stop in that number 19. And shit.
Was that the driver? Yeah, it was the driver out of the car walking around the back of it as the back is smoking. So that is the 2nd year in a row that the number 19 Grasser Lamborghini, driven by very different people and in very different liveries, has caught fire out of the bus stop.
Yeah, was it fire? Oh yeah, there is a bit of smoke. I thought it might have just been when it was refiring and there was a bit of unburnt fuel, but I can see wisps of smoke. I reckon he's probably pulled the engine bay fire extinguisher there, Nick.
Yeah, I mean, it was definitely, it looked like, my guess is it was very, very yellow, so it was probably oil of some sort. Now, whether that's a leak or there's a hole in the engine because a piston's gone through it, there's 2 different reasons. But yeah, that's going to get towed back, and my guess is that's probably done. Then it's just not been a great weekend for Grasser, has it? From moment one.
Which is a shame, Shea, because they have committed to the full season with the car this year.
They have, but they haven't announced the driver lineup yet, and they've indicated that the 8 drivers piloting their car for this race would not necessarily be, any of those 8 would not necessarily be their full season pairing, but we've yet to see if they would bring a car for the full year. They have said the Michelin Endurance Cup is something that they often aim for, but the good news for Lamborghini, they still have a car in this race. It bears the number 1, and Brian Sellers is leading the class. May I just offer the people at home, though, an opportunity. Go get yourself some popcorn. Ryan Sellers is leading, and in second place is Mr. Patrick Long.
Ah, that could be fun. Patrick in the Porsche. Things starting off a little untidily despite the split start, and Ollie Jarvis actually did a pretty good job. He'd had problems in the Mazda getting off on the formation lap, couldn't get first gear. What was it that Larry Holt said to Jeremy? The gearbox programming didn't want to play. I'm sure it was slightly more colourful than that when Larry had let Jeremy know about that, but it was quickly reprogrammed and all was good. That did mean he have to start right at the back and avoid spinning Porsche and BMW. Who was in the 19 car, Shea? When that...
It's showing as Frank Pereira behind the wheel. He must not have been in the car. Oh no, he's been in the car for 25 minutes though. So that's very strange that it would all of a sudden cause a conflagration.
Yeah. And there's definitely still wisps of smoke. The AMR safety Porsche Cayenne, as well as a flatbed. They're not even going to try and tow that. We saw Dubai a couple of weeks ago when a car had fire, which was put out at the back, and then when they tried to lift it up, of course, the air got back under it, and it took hold again.
Yeah, I mean, the problem is, speaking the obvious here, everything back there is incredibly hot. It's 400, 800 degrees, depending which bit it is. And therefore, if you have an oil leak or a hole in something, if you then tip the car at a different angle, suddenly you provide a whole new lot of fuel to fall onto hot things and therefore catch fire. So, especially with oil leaks when caused by, again, it could be a pipe coming off, it could cause exactly the same situation, but suddenly you turn to a different angle, lift the engine towards the back of the engine car, lots more oil dumps itself all over the engine. So yeah, you've got to be careful. I mean, I think it's interesting because the Lamborghinis have been very successful at Daytona when they've struggled at many other 24-hour races we've covered. But they have, of course, won here a couple of times. They win 2 out of the last 3 years. So it's surprising, this Grasser thing.
Three, just 2 different teams.
Yeah.
Just Paul Miller won last year, and the Works team won the 2 years before, because Rick Brightness was in the car the 2 years that they won, weren't it? Wasn't he, Shea?
Yep, you're right on that.
Yeah, man with too many watches. You can never have too many watches, Nick, can you?
No, that's true. Every man likes a good watch.
Another Nick-ism. And there you go, as the 19 Lambo is lifted, or at least towed winched onto the flatbed. The smoke at the back gets a little bit worse, but at least the wheels are turning. And now that it is on the flatbed, it's being I think it's going to fall off. It is. They've snapped I think they've snapped the hawser there, or the tow hooks come off, and it's very precariously now sitting right on the edge. Or was that something falling off the front? I think the angle of the winch onto the tow hook as they were winching it up there was such that it's popped off a little bit of the front splitter. It did slip back for a moment there. I was concerned.
Yeah, a puff of smoke as well. You got a little bit more oil spread on whatever was hot but didn't catch fire that time.
Yeah, this is all going on under full course yellow, and the pass around is happening now, so no time being quote unquote lost here. We did have that 30+ minute earlier on behind the safety car. That was our second safety car, which lasted 34 minutes back at just before 6 o'clock when it started, and had to go a bit longer on the safety car because some people were out of line.
I hadn't gone fast enough, which is interesting, because that's all you ever hear every racing driver say: the safety car's not going fast enough.
Yes, got a little bit jumbled and had to do a reset of the field at at IMSA Radio. Use the hashtag R24 Radio. And www.imsaradio.com is the new home for all things IMSA as far as our broadcasts are concerned. Pits are up for prototype share, and we have takers.
We do. Scott Dixon, Loic Duval, Helio Castroneves, and Kamui Kobayashi out of the top 4 coming in. I can tell you that this is no tires for Kamui. It is fuel only for the 48 machine. The man from Japan looking to try and win 3 Rolexes in a row. They're pulling out a lot of rubber bits from the brake ducts on that 48 machine. That was quite a bit. But fueling was done, and the car was sent back on its way. Let's see who is the first one off the lane. I think that was the 01. Once again, the question is Scott Dixon still behind the wheel for another stint? We have to wait until he goes through the Michelin RFID readers to get an accurate read on who is in the car. And it is showing that Scott Dixon is still behind the wheel. So that means that he's starting a quintuple stint. Wow.
Well, that's, that, in fairness though, Shea, that's not by any stretch of the fuel run, never mind the imagination. That was only 10 laps that he's in that, so that's almost exactly half a stint. So he's going to do 4.5 stints if he goes all the way to the end of that fuel stops, by the way, in full green flag, running round about 22 laps for the leading DPIs, 23 for the LMP2s, 32 for the Corvettes, 29-30 for the BMWs, 30 for the Racing Competizione Ferrari, and 30-31 for the LMP3s, and in GT Daytona, 29-30 laps, pretty much equally across the field.
Is whatever inspection panel they were opening in the ahead of the rear right wheel during Scott Dixon's stop, that did not get shut properly again. It wasn't shut properly when the mechanic hopped out of the way. So I have no idea what that inspection panel was for.
Did he use some kind of hex head screwdriver over that, or did it just pop open?
Like a Dazoo one.
Zeus fastener, was it?
Yeah, right. So, yeah. But it was definitely not shut when it went.
Right, okay.
I'm not sure how important that is. I mean, it was an area of negative pressure. It will be a problem because it will open. If it's an area of positive pressure, it won't matter.
It'll get thrust down by the airflow. We often see people adding oil or coolant under pressure, but I think that was probably, probably a bit far forward for that.
On the Cadillac, Sean, that's on the left-hand side of the car. It's on the same side as the Field Pro because they build those cars Daytona spec. That's why the cockpit entry area is on the left side of the car. It's a pressurized valve that's in between the driver's door and the fuel nozzle. And it's a little bit early for us to see them adding fluids to the Cadillacs, but that is something that we've noticed in years prior. It tends to happen in the mornings.
Yeah, we'll keep an eye out for that. Well, that's something to find out then, Shea, once you've described the pit stop from the leading GT Daytona car, the red, white and black for 2021. Number 1, Paul Miller Racing Lamborghini.
Kevin does a great job nailing the fuel probe in, and I believe that was Justin coming over the wall to clean out the area in the front of the car for the intake, and it was fuel only for the Paul Miller Racing Lamborghini back out and running. There is a Porsche in front of them. That is the WeatherTech Porsche. That is not the Wright Motorsport Porsche. So I believe that Brian Sellers got out first of the pit lane, meaning that he should have no one in front of him on the restart, but nope, Pat Long did not come into the pit. So Wright will come back in the first position, and then second is the heart of racing, Aston Martin, Ian James behind the wheel. That'll make Sarah Rigby happy.
Yeah, very happy. That car has been sitting up in the top 2 or 3 for a wee while, certainly since before we came back in the Hackney Global Broadcast Centre. Nick Damon.
Yeah, I noticed the number 1 Lamborghini has embraced the latest trend in PC manufacturing, where it's full of RGB lights, lighting everything up. That's your modern PC build for your latest high-power game will normally always have massive amounts of colour coming out the back of it. That one's fantastic. Green at the front, green at the side, green at the back. You're not going to miss it, are you?
Well, no matter which way it's coming down the pit lane, frontwards, sideways, hopefully not backwards, definitely not, but they'll still know it's their car. That's
it's our car.
It's
the green one. A bit too much green this time, Barry. Well, never mind, eh?
Yeah. Hello to Drew Adamson from iRacing, who is been watching, I think, since the start. He was getting ready for one of their Porsche Cup Championships earlier on, and he and Sean as well from iRacing, they've been watching the overhead pictures on imsaradio.com via the live video tab, and they reckon they need to change their plane model in the game, in the sim now, excuse me.
I'll get into that now. I think there were 10,500 people last weekend doing the Daytona 24 hour.
Really? 10,500 people?
People,
right.
yeah,
Right.
2.5.
That's pretty big.
3,000. I think it would have been bigger, but they had a slight issue getting going in the first place and lost about 500 teams. But it was, yeah, it's massive. So if you think about it here, well, how many drivers at this race? I'm sure Shay will know, what, 200 and something?
Yeah.
So there were 10,500 people driving this track virtually last weekend.
One of the big IMSA, big iRacing events, which will continue through the year with the iRacing Le Mans 24, Spa 24, Nürburgring 24, and Petit Le Mans, all of which we were involved with some way or another last year. How many did we have at Le Mans for the iRacing version of the race?
I think it was just, they say the Daytona was going to be bigger, but it may just, because this slight delay problem they had at the start, it might have been about the same size, it's been about 10,000. Wow. But they are, you know, you think about that, you say it quickly, go, 10,000 people were racing. Yeah, it's and they were racing endurance, and the really great thing is they were racing endurance sports cars.
Yeah.
And this is people don't clamour to race F1 cars. They don't clamour to. What everyone loves about it, and it is the teamwork. It's working in a team. Yes, yeah, you can be. It's great for this time, this world, because you can be in 5 different places. Obviously, no problem at all. It's where you are. But it's that working in the team that everyone likes, and I think that appreciation of how a team works in motorsport spreads absolutely to an appreciation of endurance racing for real.
Sure, Adam, this one for you. We've had a couple of people, including Wade Hayes Racing, who have tweeted at IMSA Radio using the hashtag R24 Radio. Can the mandatory stop for P3 brake changes be taken under caution?
Yes, it is an 8-minute stop that needs to happen at some point in the race before the 22nd hour, I want to say. But there's a brake issue going on with the 54. That's why this stop has been elongated. I'm not entirely sure if they're going to use this as their 8-minute stop. We are only 6 hours and 44 minutes into the race, so you wouldn't think that if they need to do...
Well, he's got the spreaders out, so they are doing pads at the very least on that car, but they may not be doing rotors.
And it doesn't necessarily mean that they're taking this as their 8-minute pit stop. It might just be an elongated pit stop. They might still need to serve 8 minutes worth of a pit stop later in the race. This could just be an issue. But I've also noticed that the 74 Riley Technology LMP3 car, that spent a great deal of time in the pit lane during this. Gar Robinson just now going back out on the circuit. So at least they've got their issues sorted. The 54 having that brake issue still with Colin Brown behind the wheel in the pit lane.
But the point that was being asked there from Wade Hayes Racing was the answer to that is yes, they can, so long as the pits are open under yellow. Obviously you can't come in if the pits are closed, but once it's open for prototypes, you could come in, and if there was a 10-minute safety car and you were in the pits legitimately during that time, obviously your 8-minute stop would cost you a huge amount less of track time.
Yeah, it's not to penalize anyone. It's not to say you have to sit in the pit lane for 8 minutes. It's a safety thing. So IMSA doesn't care, quite frankly, if it comes under safety car or if it comes under green flag racing. As long as the job is done, the brakes are changed safely and the brakes are changed effectively, that's what matters. That's why they gave it the 8-minute window, to make sure that everything can be done and that no teams are going to be rushing to try and get anything done.
The other side of that is that they didn't want people splashing out many tens of thousands of dollars on quick change brake equipment or fittings. But the point Wade, I think he's making, and it's one that's well made. If you can do it under a yellow, and your competitors have to do it in green flag conditions, then you will get the advantage, Wade. And yes, I see that's the question that you have been asking. Daniel Harvey Dyer, how did the number 31 slip gently back an entire lap after it was going so well? This is the red and white Cadillac, which started right at the front of the field after it was going so well in the early running. Well, first of all, with this, they'll get that lap back. In fact, they have got that lap back. And so they are now back on the lead lap, and Felipe Nasser is back behind the wheel. Shea, I'm not entirely certain I can answer that question because I wasn't on at the time that it was slipping back. Was that just a gentle loss of pace, or was there an incident or something that pushed them further back and dropping off the lead DPI lap in that very long? Remember, before this safety car, we'd had something in the region of 3 hours and 50 minutes since the end of the previous safety car.
There was no rhyme or reason. There was nothing obvious that happened to the 31 Whelen Engineering Cadillac that made it drop back. And actually, Jeremy John and I were having a conversation about this in our Skype chat, because this situation is very strange. Chase Elliott got in the car. He was doing a fine job. Mike Conway got in the car. Mike Conway always does a fine job. Pipo Derani got in the car. He did a fine job. But yet the car just seemed to lose a little bit of pace across the course of the stint. So it is a little bit of a mystery. Nasser back in the car now. He hasn't been back in the car since his quad to open up the race, one of those being an emergency service stop. But we'll see what the car can do now. And by the way, the core car is back out on the track. It's leaving the pit lane now. I'll check in with Aaron and see if that was the 8-minute stop, or if they're thinking they might have to do another one later on. What?
That's Shea Adam down as our VP Racing pit and paddock reporter, and we are under green flag, so we have gone back to racing. I was just waiting to see if we had actually had the green. We certainly had racing going through the tri-oval, and back up to speed like Duval. What we have got though in front of the leaders is some lap traffic. I think that was the core car just coming out of the pits there after that long pit stop. So they've kept it over to one side. It was the 54. So through turn 6 now. There's a few stragglers off the back of the line of cars that came back to green flag racing. Penalty for the number 82 running the light and pit exit. That's not knowing the rules, that's just not looking around. That'll be a stop plus 60 for that car. So that is going to be a lap. Yeah, that's a lap.
We're currently running third in P2, behind the 11 and the 8, with all sport and town lights. Well, that's something you really don't want to be running the light. That is a driver error. And again, he should be hit with Shea's rule book.
Which actually, depending on where you hit him, it could do some serious damage. How many pages did you say? 160 pages, Shea?
Yeah, thereabouts. Actually, I've got it pulled up. Let me just click this button. The rule book for 2021 is 155 pages.
By the sound of it.
Well, do you know what though? I can never get away with that. I always like to print it out, and normally, going to the first race of the season, you're in an airport, aren't you? So I would find myself a lounge that had a printer and print it out in whatever airline or whatever airline's paper I was in, and then leave it to be, and Shea knows this, leave it to be transported by Tyler Norling and the team with all the rest of our kit for the full season, and be able to pull it out and thumb through it as I needed to do it. That's a true story, Shea, isn't it?
But it is. But when you do it my way, you can text Paul Walters questions about the rules, and then press Control F when he sends you back numerical responses to see which rule he was referring to.
Sorry, Nick, go ahead.
Sorry, no, I was just saying that when you started your thing, when I go to a airport and check into the lounge, I thought the first thing you look for is a selection of gin they have rather than the printer.
Or whiskey, yes, indeed. It depends. It depends who I'm travelling with, of course. If you're there, we're normally heading for the whiskey selection. So,
But yeah, I mean, in fairness, I mean, it is something that is shockingly not done by too many people, and I think the biggest issue is a kind of a professional complacency in that we've run this series for X number of years. Right now it's 2021 or whatever it is, and people don't avail themselves of what's changed, what procedures have changed, and what rules have changed, what minutiae that's slightly from the previous year. And it's a weird thing, because you've got the best brains in motorsport and the tactical geniuses making simple mistakes, and that's where you kind of go, come on boys, that's just giving time away.
it's Nick Damon. He's with me, John Hindorf, in the Haggerty Global Broadcast Centre at the front of the field. Loic Duval is battling Kamui Kobayashi. Kobayashi in the number 48 Cadillac sits in second place. It's the 5 Cadillac, the darker grey car, that is out in front. And 54 car was taken out about 4 or 5 minutes ago by John Bennett. And Shea, I think that was their 8-minute stop. So tactically, they can get 17 hours out of those brakes. They've pulled an absolute blinder there.
Yep, and Jeff Brown, who is the man on their box with the brain the size of a rather large planet, he had a stopwatch running, and Aaron reliably informs me that, yep, that's their 8 minutes done and dusted. So we have our first LMP3 car with the mandatory 8-minute stop on the pit lane.
Right, well, that one's ticked off. Somebody's keeping score of this, of course, in the same way that everybody who's doing their driving is being ticked off as well. Pass for the lead, almost. The 44 Magnus NSX was just in the way at turn 1, and I say that not deliberately, just happened to be at turn 1 as the leaders turned up. Managed to stay out of the way through the Kinkits, the infield, and down to turn 5. This battle for the lead now has a bit of a gap. Next car that they will come up against in terms of traffic, and they'll catch, I think, fairly quickly, is going to be the number 91, which is the Riley Motorsports Ligier. See that in the distance. They're going to catch that in the braking area of into the bus stop.
Kobayashi now, do you try and dive through, or do you follow the slower car?
He's got to go, he's got to go, he's got to go, and he can't go. And that Riley, well, I tell you what, that was really heads. Who's in that at the moment? It's Cox, isn't it, in that car? Yes, it is. That was very heads-up driving, because he started to take his line and realised that Kobayashi was there, and then gave him about a car's width, about a Cadillac's width, to the first of the left-hand curbs.
He threw that one in up the inside there, and there was some, it's not as silly as the Collado move earlier, but you still think that's a lot of risk for very little gain when you're, only 17 hours still to go.
News of a big penalty at the sharp end of the field. Shea Adam has this VP Racing Fuel pit and paddock update.
I thought it looked like Loic Duval put his right foot down a little bit too early on that restart, but I didn't want to say anything because it's race control's decision, and race control has decided that Loic Duval went a little bit too early on that restart. Jump restart, car 5, the penalty, a drive down the pit lane. He was already past the Konica Minolta Acura well before the start-finish line, and well clear of the 0-1 Chip Ganassi Racing Cadillac going into turn 1. Then he seemed to back off a tiny little bit, but he held the position. but it's all for naught. Loic Duval, you got to come see Richard. You got to come wave to him.
When we were going back to green, it was one of the reasons that I paused, because it didn't look like a start, because the racing had started too far back. Down below the yellow line as well, I should mention, although that isn't necessarily a punishable offence, but the offence that has been picked up is that he was passed before the start line, and that means that Loic Duval will peel off. I can't see that they've got any defence on that, Nick Damon. It was pretty blatant, and that means that when Loic pulls down, the Ally Cadillac number 48 will be into the lead. Now, somebody needs to be on the phone to Camry at the moment and say, right, unless you feel under pressure from the car behind, which is one S. Dixon of this parish, who is pushing very hard indeed, there's no need to be overly aggressive with what is at the moment the quote-unquote leader.
Yeah, Duval got a good run, and at the same time, the other two, I think, realised they were going a bit too quickly for the restart. They eased back, he went forward, suddenly found himself past both and thought, shall I go? Then thought, no, I won't. It was too late, he'd gone past start-finish, and it was it was another silly mistake.
Just mistimed on the throttle, I think. Side by side for the effective lead of the race as Scott Dixon stays down low in Speedway 1 and 2 and goes by Kamui Kobayashi. Got a great run out of turn 6, but Kobayashi's coming back at him and will head down to the inside. He's very late on the brakes into the bus stop and takes him back. Oh, fantastic stuff. As I say, racing for the effective lead with Loic Duval needing to come in this time or next, or has he got one more after that shit?
Well, you get 4 total trips underneath the start-finish gantry before you start receiving that black flag. He's already done one of them, and he peels into the pit lane to serve the 60 kilometers an hour trip down the pit lane. It's going to feel painful for him at this state, but rules are rules.
Just a quick note, by the way, the 48 avoided a time penalty, but was warned by race control at that last pit stop for having an improperly attired crew member at that fuel-only stop. So they will not get warned again for that, Shay. So that, if that happens again, whoever's in the car at whatever time of the race, that will be a penalty.
That tends to be called as a warning in practice when the person manning the fire bottle or the refueler is not wearing the fireproof socks. During the race, it tends to be when somebody has a visor up in terms of refueling. So I'd imagine that's a fairly easily to fix problem.
Side by side again on the banking. Adam takes a deep breath as the GTD Ferrari, I think it was a 63 car, came under attack from the two leaders. They're already down and way past, and specks in the distance, the rear lights now through the onto the turn 3-4 area.
Well, Dixon, that was because he backed out of the first run through the bus stop because he could see it was only going to end in tears one way or the other, and then just steeled himself for the following lap, and then managed to use some traffic to just give himself that little extra gap to break the toe from Kobayashi. So that's a good couple of laps for Scott, and it's put him in the lead.
Another race hour completed on IMSA Radio. 107.9 around the track, Sirius 216 XM 202, and around the world in sound and vision for most of you at imsaradio.com. Hello there, if you are just joining us or maybe coming back to the race after nipping away. 20 minutes before 11 Eastern. 17 hours rather of the race still to go. I'm not going to say we're settling down, because we aren't. We've still got this great battle with Kobayashi. We'll do a Mazda in-race update for you in a moment. Kobayashi and Scott Dixon battling for the lead. Scott's pulled out the 1.3, nearly 1.4 seconds. he is a very, very good endurance driver. No, scratch that. He's a very, very good driver, and also gets great fuel mileage in whatever he drives. I remember talking to Dario Franchitti about him some time ago. Dario, by the way, pretty good on fuel mileage as well. Always put it down to his own fuel mileage, down to not left foot braking. And when they went to the IndyCar that had the brake pedal on the opposite side of the steering column from the throttle, he had to learn to left foot brake, which is not an easy thing to do if you've not done it before. Scott Dixon does have the ability to make mileage on that car. So Scott Dixon then, let's have a quick run through. We're in traffic, we'll keep an eye on the gap as Scott Dixon comes through the GT Daytona field. Both of the Lexus back out after early wars, now coming up behind the number 88 Porsche. That had Catherine Legg in it the last time I looked, and good to see that car running well. Now past the Volt Aston Martin and in behind the number 57 Winward AMG GT. Kobayashi rather frustrated, I think, that he's seen Scott Dixon just open out a little bit. He took a second out of him that time around. So Dixon, as Nick noted earlier on, not just quick, but really quick in traffic, and always difficult as the leader, because you hit the traffic first, and once in a while you might wake up a dozy GT3 driver like me going around there and
with the race. Everyone's used to being overtaken.
That is true.
It's absolutely true, though. If you watch the first time the leaders come to traffic in any race, there's kind of a huge kerfuffle. Going, "Whoa! I never expected the car to overtake you from behind." But you've only done 1,000 endurance races before. But now everyone's kind of used to it. More important, they've also worked out where they'd like to be overtaken, if possible. In the various parts of the track, because there's a kind of point. Yes. You don't want to lose time overtaking, but even more, you don't want to lose time being overtaken. So if I breathe on the throttle here, can he get by without, giving me aero wash into the next corner? So it's a two-way street, and you can see, you can see sometimes that the cars get it wrong, sometimes they get it right. And it's the biggest problem you've got always, of course, is if you're in the fastest car, but the second fastest car is trying to get past the third fastest car at the same time, and they're all focusing on their own individual actions.
Well, and that's why there's an art to being overtaken as much as there is to doing the overtaking, because you want to lose as little time as possible. Let's continue our in-race update with Mazda, and it is the Win Autosport Oreca that leads LMP2 in 8th position at the moment. Thomas Merrill behind the wheel, having recently taken that over from Matt Bell. In 2nd place is Timothy Bure for Tower Motorsport, the number 8, and in 3rd, Antonio Fueco for Chetala Racing in the Dallara. So Oreca Dallara. In LMP3, it's Kenton Cook for Milner Motorsports, the car that started on pole position. That's the Duquesne, formerly Norma, that organisation. That's Wilsey in the Chonkreach Motorsport, Ligier in 2nd, and Gar Robinson in 3rd, 6:33 and 74. In GT Le Mans, it's the 2 Corvettes, the Risi Competition Ferrari, and Timo Glock now behind the wheel of the first of the BMWs. So that's 4-3, 62, 25 and 24. So 5 of the 6 back together again. Remember the big problem early on with contact right at the very start for the 3rd of the 3 full-time entries for the IMSA WeatherTech Sports Car Championship. The WeatherTech number 79 Porsche, that car was hit fairly substantially, and by the BMW number 25, the red car. I had to remember that there, and required some remedial work on the pit lane. GTD, Pat Long and Brian Sellers duking it out. Pat Long for Wright Motorsport leads. Porsche number 16 from Paul Miller Racing's number 1 Lamborghini Huracan Daniel Serra, sitting about 3 seconds away from the lead battle in the 21 AF Corsa Ferrari. Then it's Ian James for Aston Martin, number 2 seconds further back in the 23 Heart of Racing team car. Then Philip Ellis behind the wheel of Winwood Racing. Philip very tidy on sim racing as well, being part of the iRacing Nürburgring digital series run by VCO Esports, and he's very good in real life on the Nürburgring as well. Nice to see him in that Winwood car. And Lawrence Van Tur, Pfaff Motorsport, Porsche 911 makes up the top 6. That is your update from here at Daytona, with 16 hours and 53 minutes to go. So 31 now back on the lead lap. Felipe Nasser at 38.1 last time around. All right, he had a bit of traffic, but the leaders, 35s. The two Cadillacs at the front of the field are the quickest cars in this phase of the race, before and after that caution.
Yeah, I mean, I think we're beginning to find a settled race pace. I think the track now is going to do not a lot more, apart from getting a bit dirty or a bit more marbling over the next 5 or 6 hours. We reach the kind of the bottom of the temperature dip of the day. I mean, with it out there now, it's now what, nearly 11 o'clock in. Nearly 11 o'clock? Yeah, nearly 11 o'clock over in Florida. So it's getting so, but it looks like they've just got their setup right. I mean, because you're not looking at a big driver offset. So it's the fact they've got their setup right, and it's not just how you get round and pound round the laps. It's also obviously whether you have the dexterity and the flexibility in the car to easily change directions to get past other members of the car, with other cars, other classes. So they found a sweet spot, certainly compared to the other DPIs. Whether that will remain as we go through this 24-hour race and the ever-evolving situation is questionable, but it's nice to be there now. The only problem is it's very unlikely you can put in a massive expansion of lead, because there's going to be at some point, despite the 4 hours of green we got a minute ago, another yellow flag that bring them back together. And my question always is, if you've got this car that's going so well, when do you actually start thinking, well, I'm half a minute ahead, there's no point being any further ahead, so I'll just go to fuel safe mode?
So Nasser dropping back, 38.1 last time around, but the leaders were 37.1s. Now he's come down to a 37.3. It did seem to take the red and white number 31 a little longer to get up to speed after restart, even earlier on, if memory serves. But I'm going to keep an eye on that now, because he's dropped 15 seconds on the leaders since the restart. Just a couple of other storylines as well. And Jeremy feeding through some information to us, even though he's on a break at the moment. The 55 Mazda Motorsports DPI rather missed their opportunity. I'm picking my words carefully, and I can't read exactly what Jeremy said to me from Larry Holt. The 55 missed its opportunity to get the lap back. They came in at the wrong time, came in a lap early. Missed communication is what we're putting that down to. If you know Larry Holt, you can imagine that he was fairly forthright in what he said then, how he described that genuine mistake by the team. What a character, what a brain as well. You were talking about brain the size of a planet earlier on, Shane. Larry Holt in that category, Multimatic, still 16 or something there. They're employing their main spot in Toronto. Still have an office in Huntington, in the centre of the UK. 8 people working there. So getting a little bit of running now after that break for the yellow, and that was caused by the Lamborghini with an issue. I saw a very sheer stat. Yes, SRA Smoking Puppy in both 20 and 21. The 5th caution of the 24-hour of Daytona was caused by a mechanical issue for the number 19 GTT Lamborghini. Yep, both 5th caution. Something about that then. We'll have to watch for that next year, won't we? And see if it does it again. That's a yeah, well, yeah, let's hope they can make sure it doesn't happen. That's the sort of stat progression share that you love, isn't it?
That's the kind of thing that I watch out for sure. I'm just looking at our Michelin Endurance Cup points that have been released from that first stint. Would you like to know them by team? It's very easy if I do it that way.
Okay, go.
All right, DPI with 5 points is the number 5 Mustang Sampling Cadillac. With 4 points is the 01 Cadillac Chip Ganassi Racing. With 3 was the number 10 Konica Minolta Acura, and then everybody else in the class got 2. Nice and straightforward.
Yep.
For the LMP2 class, it was car number 11, Win Autosport, in their debut. They scored the maximum amount of points. Second place was the 82 Dragon Speed. They took 4 points. In third place with 3 points was Tower Motorsport. That's car number 8, and then everybody else got 2 points. In LMP3, Riley Motorsport, car number 74, maximum point. Second was Sean Creech for the 33 LMP3 machine, and then in third was Muehlner Motorsport in their car number 6. And then in GTLM, we've got car 4, which has led most of the race today. 5 points, 4 points for the sister car, the number 3, and with 3 points was the 25 BMW. And then in terms of GTD, which is our only other class, it was Wright Motorsport who came away with the maximum number of points. Second was Paul Miller Racing, the defending Michelin Endurance Cup champs in that category. Third, Heart of Racing for the 23 Aston Martin, and then everybody else with 2 points.
And that was at the 6 hour mark. It's 6:12:18 and the end here for Michelin Endurance Cup points here, as far as I remember. Interesting to note as well, by the way, that the point scoring in Michelin Endurance Cup share has not changed this year. It's exactly as it was. It's 5 on down, as you mentioned, whereas the point scoring in the main championship has been basically times up by 10.
Yes, and actually this is a wonderful opportunity to explain something. I spent some time on the phone this morning with Race Control. The points that were scored in qualifying, and yes, you heard me correctly, points are now awarded for qualifying. You get 35 points for a pole position, 32 for second, 30 for third, and so on down. Now, you might be thinking that's a lot of points. If the last time you joined us, that was a race-winning score for the IMSA WeatherTech Sports Car Championship. In qualifying for this event, we had a race, which resulted in the car scoring points. So the drivers of the car that started the race today were awarded the points based on where the car's starting position was. This is specifically in reference to Ryan Hardwick, who qualified the 16 Wright Motorsport Porsche, but is not participating in the race due to health issues. And Ryan, we wish you the best. We hope that you get well soon from your concussion that you sustained the other day. But in effect, Trent Hinman, who fills in for him, takes the points for the qualifying position, which for Wright Motorsport, I believe, was 9th. And it also comes into effect for Stephen McAleer and Kenton Cook, who did not participate. Well, Kenton participated in the qualifying session, but Stephen McAleer was not a part of the Mueller Motorsports Duquesne team, the number 6. He is for the race, so he does get points, meaning that anyone going forward who participated in the Rolex, in theory, has points going towards them when they get to Sebring.
Yeah, and that's across every driver, not the person who, in this case, who took the checkered flag to get the grid position, or indeed in the future, it gets even more complicated in the future, but I don't even want to go there at the moment because there's point scoring for in some of the classes for 2 different drivers in 2 different sessions, and I already need to put my head in a bucket of cold water just thinking about that. Nick,
how many points for a win?
How many points for a win? 350 now, isn't it, Shane?
350. Yeah. But the interesting thing is that we have a couple of the classes who are participating in, say, 11 events over the course of the year. If you get 11 pole positions, that's equivalent to a race win.
Yeah, very good.
A race win.
Is IMSA's idea that we're going to have the mostest points ever for our champion?
It's trying to bring more value towards qualifying, and to be honest, then you can punish people for changing their qualifying position from qualifying into starting. For example, if somebody elects to start at the back of the pack on fresh tires, they forfeit all of their qualifying points and walk away with 0, not minimum points, 0.
Right, okay, that is interesting. That's the bit I was going to ask you about. And share what we were talking about a week ago when the qualifying race was on here at Daytona. 35 is for the pole. What's the difference between first and second? 350 for first, and second gets you.
That would be 320 points.
Yeah, so you can make up the difference between first and second if you were on pole, and the person who won the race perhaps was sent to the back for changing tyres or changing your starting drive or something like that. So
I'll be controversial now.
yes,
I haven't got a problem with him awarding points to qualify and awarding points to the race. I think the problem they've got is by awarding so many points, it ends up being very difficult for people to actually work out where anyone is as a championship progresses, because the number gaps are so great. That's not how we work our maths in our head. So if it's like 25 points for a win, and someone is 27 points ahead, you know, he's a win and a seventh ahead. If they're 410 points ahead, whilst that's still a win and a seven, it just doesn't work in our brains. And I think that for ease of following, those exactly the same thing. It's way harder to understand when the gap is 400 points than when it's 25, even though the actual gap in track terms is the same.
See, anybody who's watched V8, Aussie V8, Aussie supercars will know all about this, because when you get down towards the end of the season, plus some races have more points than others, much the same as they do in the WEC as well. They have additional points for the longer races. And anyway, I don't have to worry about it, because that's why I've got Shea and Jeremy to do all of that. We were talking about the 16 Wright Motorsport Porsche earlier on, Shea, and it has just pulled into the pit lane for what looks to be fuel only.
Which would mean that Patrick Long is staying aboard, and it means that he is not getting new Michelins, and indeed he's not. Just a clean out of the radiator grill and waiting for the Ginger Ninja to go back out on the circuit. Doesn't even get a windshield tear off, just gets it clean. But you know what, Wright Motorsport, I'm a little mad at you right now. I really wanted to see that battle between Sellers and Plongy, and nope, as soon as Sellers started catching up, they called him into the pit lane. But this is interesting, because this means that Patrick Long is going to double stint his tires, whereas Brian Sellers was already double stinting his tires. And the leading class was Daniel Serra, the AF Course Ferrari, car number 21. Daniel was on fresh tires, so this is a very interesting tire strategy happening before us.
So Daniel got into that, he did an 8-lap stint, so presumably he got new tyres then, and now he's done 19, so he's actually almost done a full stint on those tyres, albeit he's been down the pit lane when that yellow came out, as everybody else at the front of the field did. So Daniel, Brian Sellers in second, Philip Ellis in third now for Winward GT4 as the right Porsche, and Pat Long goes out and gets past on the acceleration lane out of the pit. That's all right. The pit lane speed limiter, speed trap is done at that point, and that was a very rapid exit. And the pit lane is part of the racetrack. I think that was a GT3 car that came out of. I know it was. You're right. No, it was Kobayashi, or was it Rossi?
Or Rossi. I think it was Rossi.
It was dark blue, isn't it?
I've got Halen. I've got Jan Halen in that car, by the way, in the 16.
Yeah, I've got that too, and I've actually just received some intel from David Malsher. Hello, David, and thank you.
Hi,
saying Wright did change tires.
Oh, okay. Right, so what we didn't see was the driver change then. But that makes sense. If you change your driver, you want to put them onto a new set of tyres. So that's Jan Halen just weaving left and right. In fairness, we witnessed the pit stop from the onboard camera, and that is in the right-hand side, the passenger side for this race car. And switch of driver as well, unless something was knocked inside. But if you've put new tyres on after a stint, so that car is out there. Go ahead, Shane.
Was that the fireworks in the background?
Should be.
It's 9 o'clock. 11 o'clock.
11 o'clock, yeah, 11 o'clock fireworks. It was in the driver briefing and the SSRs, these supplementary regulations, and they were told just to be careful. Jan Helen still moving around on the tri-oval, presumably trying to get heat in the front of that number 16 Wright Motorsport car. That's the teal coloured car. It's very interesting. That's his second, going into his third lap out of the pit lane. And the traditional, some of the traditions we haven't been able to do, like the autograph session and the open grid, but the fireworks still happening on the far side of Lake Lloyd from the grandstands. Drivers, as I say, were briefed about it and confirmed that the right car took 4 tyres, and we think a driver as well on that car. And if you wonder why we didn't pick that up, we aren't allowed to be in that bubble in the pit lane, and that is why our interviews are not on the end of a microphone, but we're using a variety of different telecommunications to get things done. And thanks to the technical team in our main control room for Radio Show Limited and IMSA Radio in London in the UK, just south of the River Thames there. Tim Gray earlier on, and it's Kes Cobb, the irreplaceable Kes Cobb, who I was listening to on the wireless the other day.
Oh my gosh, really?
It is actually an online radio station, and she was playing some cracking 80s and 90s music. I was very happy indeed to be tuned in. That was last Sunday, actually, once we'd got finished with the 100 minutes of racing. Sung jingles and everything with her name on. She's hit the big time.
Wow. No, at this point, I'm quite impressed.
Mate.
Tim's been producing jingles for years, many of them very humorous, but none of them mentioning our names.
Yeah, true enough.
How many years have we doing these shows with you, and I haven't got a single jingle with my name in it? I think neither of you either, to be honest.
There were
It's your station.
There were some. It's not my station at all. There were some for Midweek Motorsport that right in the very beginning that had names in, but we just tended not to use them because it's a.
Everyone has as big an ego as me, you mean?
Well, it's a collaborative effort, isn't it? All of these things we do, we can't do it without everybody else. There'd be no point me standing in the Haggerty Global Broadcast booth if I didn't have all the rest of the on-air talent and indeed everybody else behind the scenes, and whether that's in London, in Charlotte, from the guys at NASCAR Productions who make sure that every racetrack we go to around the States we see all the cameras for the sessions that we cover, the technical team in London, the commercial team under the responsible adult, our partners, our commercial partners themselves, and of course everybody at IMSA at the track who also make sure that we can do our job. It's a collaborative effort, which is something.
Jingle, wouldn't it really?
Yeah.
All those names on it.
It's just, yeah, it would have to be everybody
we've ever met.
Yeah,
Can I
that's
thank you to Alex and Matt for sorting out the pictures, by the way. So
yes.
Thank you very much, Alex and Matt.
Yeah, very good.
TV Productions.
Up at Charlotte. Just changed a little, always seeking improvement, and one of the great things with working with good people, and funny enough I was talking about this to somebody else the other day when we were talking about doing our sim racing coverage. One of the things I really was impressed about with iRacing was that they were prepared to take a look at new solutions and suggestions, even though they're at the very top of their game. That's exactly what NASCAR Productions have been. We've worked together to find solutions in these difficult times, but we're not standing still. We're still trying to improve, and they've responded really well. So all the Matts, because there are several Matts involved, Alex and Keith and Patrick as well, our directors. Thank you very much indeed for all the hard work. And by the way, we will have Rooftop Ray in the overnight session, the Night Owl session, for 3 hours from 3 till 6 Eastern as well. So just coming up to 10 past 11, and just a note there that Alexander Rossi got ahead of Kamui Kobayashi in that last set of pit stops. So unfortunately, I can't.
Doing it coming out the pits, you know.
It might have been. Rossi is, he's a smart cookie, somewhat divisive character sometimes, but nobody can deny the speed that he has.
He knows what he wants, and I think that when you're on the way up, you're supposed to kowtow a bit more. He never was, and he pushed his way out of series. Going, there's no point me doing this anymore. He didn't hang on to F1. There's no point me doing this anymore. I'm going to go and do something else. So I've actually got a lot of respect for Rossi. I don't think he did it in an abrasive way like Scott Speed did, and absolutely annoyed everyone else. I think he just made everyone know exactly what he felt in a, I think, kind of professional way. I've got a lot of time for Rossi actually, whereas some of the other people had similar attitudes. I don't.
And there's no doubt about his speed. Van der Zande then leading by 6.2 seconds. The Chip Ganassi number 01, as our pictures and therefore our sound at the moment is from the aerial shots, which are absolutely stunning. Can't hear the cars too much from where we're watching at the moment, but really see the relative pace of the cars and how they work the traffic, and doing a very good job at the moment is Renger van der Zande. He's got a whole gaggle of a variety of GT cars as he's coming up to the kink now, and just heading actually through turn 6, my apologies, that was out of the second of the horseshoes at the western end, and now goes to the high side. Low is where you go if you're slow. That's the general rule of thumb, Shane. That's what our race director Bo Barfield said in the online driver briefing that was done as part of the protocols here, and it's all different, but there's good reasons for it. There's a special testing station out over the far side, the back of the racetrack actually, and everybody has to go there every day, even if they are within the circuit, but not within. For example, the owner and driver's RV lot is separate and separated deliberately from the pit lane bubble. So if you are going between the two, you can't just walk through the gate. You've got to go out to, I think it's gate 70, isn't it? Get your temperature taken, get the QR codes, and then drive a specific way to get back in and get into the bubble of the working pit.
Yep, you have to have a sticker on your hard card every day. It's different color, and they are different. They reflect different things. They have different letters on them to say where you are and aren't allowed to go. For example, the PR people are not.
Just a moment, because we got the core car, which we thought had played a blinder. John Bennett's moving slowly. Turn 7, which is the dreaded bus stop area.
I saw him running slowly on the apron, trying to get back in the pits on around NASCAR 3. I think I just saw him in the background.
That would be about right. I'm trying to pick him up on the tracker, but there's so many cars in a big gaggle at the moment. It's difficult to see. In GT, keep an eye on that. In GT Le Mans, Corvette Racing, Antonio Garcia leads by a couple of seconds from his teammate Tom Milner. 3 from 4 now, so they've swapped around as well. For the longest time, it was 4 from 3. And James Collado is behind the wheel of the Risi Competizione Ferrari. He's another 2 seconds further back, and he's got 8 seconds on the first of the BMWs, which are running in lockstep. It's 25 from 24, Timo Glock and Augusto Farfus, who was demonstrating the new East TCR car earlier on today. The new Hyundai Veloster with the electric power, and it goes. Yeah. It goes. Say again?
The electric TCR.
Yeah.
I see.
ETCR.
When's that coming out? That's a championship next year, isn't it?
Well, talk about IMSA, who obviously are the North American licensees, for want of a better word, of TCR. being involved in a championship in North America. Marcello Lotti, the original Super Touring and World Touring Car organiser, and the now the creator of TCR, which is, let's be honest, has done for touring car racing around the world, Nick, what GT3 and GT4 did for GT racing. It was a masterstroke from Marcello Lotti.
No, brilliant, and much to everyone's surprise, these things run 24 hours, no problem at all. So the design for 20 minutes lasts 24 hours. That's not many cars you can say that about.
It's normally the other way around. Some of the cars we've driven in our lifetime, Nick, isn't it?
I've driven many cars that were designed for 24 hours, and you wouldn't get 20 minutes out. Yeah, mostly because of the Lucas Electrics, but that's not with free added smoke, of course. But I think it's interesting, isn't it, how necessity, which is finance, become the mother of invention, and you can point at TCR, you can point at GT3, and I think we can now also look into the future, point to DPI and DPI H, or sorry, I keep forgetting DPI point 2, about how eventually people get sensible and they design platforms that work for the manufacturers and for the customers, and customer racing becomes key. There are only so many places where you can spend cubic dollars anymore, and endurance racing isn't really one of them, because it is powered by gentlemen drivers, privateers, independent professionals who yes, there are works teams, but they all need to be catered for as well by a competitive series that gives you lots of variety and choice.
Yeah, they did a good job. Car looked splendid in the bright red, blue and dark blue livery. Pit stops for GTD Shear, and in comes the Aston Martin of Heart of Racing.
And Ian James somehow made that 107-liter fuel tank last for an hour and 10 minutes. But also coming into the pit lane was Max Root in the TF Sport Aston Martin. That's the bright yellow ones, both of them pitting on the same lap. I think Root, no, he had stayed out in the last stop too, so that could have been a very long stint for him as well. Both of them in, both of them taking fuel tires, and it looks like driver changes for both cars as well.
Do you know, we were talking earlier on, weren't we, and up to Austin McCusker as well, about why do you keep going when things have gone wrong early on. Milner Motorsports started at the front of the field after winning the qualifying race last Sunday. Had some problems. 4 laps down after the first hour. Kenton Cook now back to the top of LMP3. Thank you, Jeremy, for that. And Kenton Cook, the LMP3 on my timing screens are a very bright purple, which is Kenton Cook's sim racing colour. He reckons that he's never had anybody run into him when he's been running a purple car. So I look at that, and I actually, all LMP3s, I keep thinking Kenton will be driving because of that colour that's next to it. And Nick, you commentated on the IMSA Racing Pro Series last year, and Kenton went to that bright purple colour very, very early on in whatever category he was racing last year.
He got punted off in round 1, didn't he?
Yes, he did. He did, and then he went to the bright sort of chrome purple, including the wheels.
Yeah, he got eased out in mid-Ohio, didn't he? Going literally round before the race had started, in the corner, the final corner before the start-finish straight.
Correct.
Yeah. Amazing how your brain turns up, doesn't it?
Into the pits for the number 3. This was the leading Corvette. Antonio Garcia in for service with Corvette Racing in the mid-engined C8R. Shea Adam.
He certainly should be staying behind the wheel. He started off this race with a triple stint. Jordan Taylor got in for a double. Nick Katzberg did a double. And that was Antonio Garcia's first stint behind the wheel. So fuel tires and perhaps a new drinks bottle for the King of Spain.
Every time you say that, it's a shame Jeremy's not on, actually. I always remember the story about, I think it was Phil Tufnell, English cricketer, who was a spin bowler, S-P-I-N, spin bowler. And for his benefit year, the county he played for decided to get a whole load of hats and sell the hats. Phil Tufnell, King of Spin. Unfortunately, it was misread, and so they all said Phil Tufnell, King of Spain on them instead, which always makes me giggle. Test match starting this week, aren't we, in England, in India, after a 2-0 win over Sri Lanka.
Leads changed, by the way.
at the front of the field.
Yep.
Just a moment or two ago, Kamui Kobayashi, who had been under pressure himself, caught up with Renger van der Zande, using a bit of traffic through the early part of the infield section, and nips through into the lead in the number 48 Ally Cadillac Racing.
Well, that's irritating with 16 hours to go. It's you know, potentially race changing in the last half hour. You just choose the wrong way to go past a back marker at the set or a different class car. You know, we were battling for the lead or battling position. You just went the wrong way, and how he went with it. And someone who was blocked off and coming through with it was coming through too, wasn't it? And that was it. Kobayashi through.
And immediately jumps out into a lead. So again, this is what we were talking about earlier on, people coming to us all the time. I understand that on RS2 IMSA Radio and live in sound and vision at IMSARadio.com. The Cadillacs do seem to have remarkably different performance through different parts of their stint. Kobayashi's got this one wound up. Alexander Rossi, who's got ahead of that 48, now down into third, and 12 seconds adrift of Kamui. And it is really, really noticeable how the performance potential of the cars are changing through the fuel burn and the tyre wear. And Rossi, you know, Rossi and Kobayashi came out pretty much together 11 laps ago, and Rossi, as we reported, got ahead of Kobayashi. Renger van der Zande 9 laps ago, so a little bit different, but now 12 seconds behind.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is that we you know, there's 4 Cadillacs in the race, and we're you know, and if you watch other forms of racing, you'll think, oh, there's 4 Cadillacs in the team. They're all in a team together, so they're all no. These are 4 separate teams running a Cadillac car. Therefore, there'll be 4 different setups. Yes, things will be similar. They've probably got slightly different aero setups. I'm sure they've got slightly different damper setups. There's slightly different anti-roll bar setups. It'll be, you know, small amounts, but those small amounts will change how the car behaves. As you said, as fuel goes off, as the tyres go through their run, how they run in traffic. Are they better in the tow? Because whilst they are all Cadillacs, they're all set up minutely differently, and that's why we see this ebb and flow as the cars come together. Because on the whole, all the drivers are absolutely top rates. There's not a lot between them most of the time, unless they having an off day or making a mistake. But you know, you can see now, you know, they're beginning to condense again as Van der Zande getting back close to Kobayashi. So you know, that kind of ebb and flow is because the cars aren't the same, despite all being Cadillacs.
Scott Fitzsimmons in Australia, thanking me for reminding about cricket and the Gabba result against India. That's a great test match though, wasn't it? 5 days and it came down to the last 20 minutes. Great stuff. And by the way, my cricket story was only slightly incorrect, that I got the wrong spin bowler and the wrong item of merchandising. It was Ashley Giles and mugs as Declan Brennan and Dom and a number of other people. But the point was there. I always remember that bit. She talks about Antonio Garcia being the king of spin.
That's how I'll tell the story. It's Phil Tufnell's t-shirts.
No, you change it again. Ashley Giles' mugs, absolutely.
Yeah, you know. Well, it'll go. Derek Underwood's talked about. You know.
Not sure they ever did personalised items of undergarments. We've got Ferraris in the pit lane. Shea Adam, bring us back to some form of sanity.
Alrighty, if you insist. We've got fuel and tires for the number 21 Ferrari. That's A, of course, and Daniel Serra bringing the car in from the lead of the GTD race. It's just some names to give you a bit of a whetted appetite during this pit stop. We've got in various cars in the Porsche for Faf, Zach Robichon, first time driving since the start of the race. Andrea Caldarelli has taken back over the Paul Miller Racing Lamborghini from Brian Sellers. Jack Hawksworth stays in the 14 Lexus, and I believe that was fuel only for Jack because he bolted up quite a few positions during that stop. And thank you, Faf, for taking Bantor out of the car, because Earl Bamber is now on track in the 88 Team Hardpoint EBM Porsche. So we do not yet have Bantor on track at the same time, meaning that Larry and Earl both are staying on their wheels, at least for now. And it was a driver change, the 21 Ferrari, by the way. That is Simon Mann taking back over that car. In terms of GTLM, we've had full service for both of the Corvettes, Tom Milner and Antonio Garcia staying aboard, as we said. Both of the BMWs, John Edwards jumping back into the 24, Timo Glock Pew Pew staying aboard the 25. Davide Rigon reinstalls himself to the Ferrari fuel and tires for Risa Competizione as well.
Thank you, Shea. Hello to Jack Solowski. Good luck on the new job. Ski instructor starts Monday at IMSA Radio. Hashtag R24R. R24 Radio. As Kimberly Kobayashi continues to extend that lead, 1.5 seconds over Renger van der Zande, who's now got 11.5 seconds over Rossi. So Rossi stabilised that at 12.5 seconds to the leader. He's got 17, call it 18 seconds on AJ Allmendinger, taking a break from the NBC booth. And which one's his day job now, Shea?
Cat and dog sitting is his day job. He's got 2 pets that travel with him regularly.
That's right.
So yeah, Mr. Tickles, the cat, and I believe it's Lola, the dog. So yeah, the dog and cat parent is his primary job. This is just a hobby.
Nick had a cat called Lola, didn't you?
I did, yes, she left me. She left me for wet food. It's a long story.
Never came back?
Came back once, left me again. Came back because she got handed to the vet with a chip, and then came back home again. And then about 8 weeks later, left again for more wet food. Well, the joke's on her, because Charlie gets wet food these days, so ha!
I sometimes wonder what goes on in the Damon household. I really do.
All sorts of animals doing all sorts of weird things.
Absolutely right. So almost after 20 past 11 now, but plenty of darkness running still to go, as we mentioned. Sun went down officially at 1 minute past 6, and we don't see it again until after 7 in the morning. 7:13. More traffic to be dealt with by our leading cars. That's order of the day. Pick your passes, one of our Porsche keys to the race. That's not just about passes for position, getting through as well. Felipe Nasser now just 10th or so behind AJ Allmendinger, and that's the battle for fourth. So now the 31 car starting to come alive a bit more, and on similar lap times as the cars around it, and in fact goes through as they go through the tri-oval, gets by the number 60 of AJ Allmendinger and goes back up into fourth position, has 20.5 seconds to make up Alexander Rossi. That's his next target. However, pit stops will intervene, of course, in a relatively short order. About 2/3, 3/4 of the way through their stints, the top drivers. In fact, Felipe Nasser is the one who's been out there the longest on this fuel run. He did 18 laps last time around. The car's been doing 21 and 22. Yeah,
that's what the virtual runs were getting as well, about 22 laps.
So that's spot on, very good. Felipe Nasser on 17 on his 18th lap at the moment, so he's probably got another 4 laps at the front of the field. The Ally Cadillac has just completed 17 laps. Ray Van Zander, Chip Ganassa's Cadillac has just done 14, so on to his 15th lap. Rossi completed his 16th lap and on to his 17th, so all there or thereabouts within a lap or two. And remember, as far as the DPIs at the front of the field are concerned, Ollie Jarvis still a lap off the lead, and that 55 car not quite getting its lap back when it had the opportunity to at the last stop, and that will be haunting the team for the moment. They'll be hoping for another yellow flag at some stage in the future. The leading LMP2 car, the Win Autosport Oreca, the distinctive purple LED lighting around the air intake on that Oreca 11 car, in relatively clear air for once. Nick Damon, as he's coming out of the infield section.
Yeah, the P2 race, which I would have put money on being a closely hard-fought fight with any one from the 10, has not materialised at all.
Yet.
We've lost 4 of the cars already, or 5 of the cars, and the others are like Andrea Fuoco, the very, very good ex-Ferrari junior running in 3rd, is a minute 11 behind the lead, and I know it'll go down to nothing with the first with the next yellow flag, but the fact that the Win Autosport cars managed to pull out 55 seconds on the Tower Motorsport machine, you think that's got a lot of basic pace the others don't have at the moment. And my advice to them would be to just keep the powder dry now. You've got 54 seconds, you don't need any more. There's no point even getting the lap, because the lap will get given back as well. So you may as well just at this point, just go into car conservation mode, knowing you've got that speed in the Oreca.